Good evening. The September 12th meeting of the Evanston City Council will come to order after what I'm sure has been a long, arduous 5-week break between City Council meetings.
Recording in progress.
Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen? Here. Councilmember Newsma?
Here.
Councilmember Burns?
Here.
Councilmember Sufferton? Councilmember Ravel?
Here.
Councilmember Reed? Here. Councilmember Hadakaris?
Here.
And Councilmember Kelly?
Here.
We have 7 members present, I think if I counted right, and therefore we have a quorum and are prepared to do our work. The first item on our agenda will be my public announcements and proclamations. So I have a couple proclamations I want to share with the community. As I said, it's been a long 5 weeks, but I will learn how to operate a microphone quickly. The first is regarding National Diaper Need Awareness Week, which will be from September 24th through October 2nd of this year. And it reads as follows: whereas diaper need, the condition of not having a sufficient supply of clean diapers to ensure that infants and toddlers are clean, healthy, and dry, can adversely affect the health and welfare of infants, toddlers, and their families. And whereas national surveys report 1 in 3 mothers experience diaper need at some time while their children are under 3 years of age, and 48% of families delay changing a diaper to extend their supply. And whereas the average infant or toddler requires an average of 50 diaper changes per week over 3 years, and whereas the people of Evanston recognize that addressing diaper need can lead to economic opportunity for the state's low-income families and can lead to improved health for families and their communities, and whereas, critically, Evanston is proud to be home to Bundled Blessings Diaper Pantry and various community organizations that together recognize the importance of diapers in helping provide economic stability for families and distribute diapers to low-income families through various channels. Now, therefore, I, Daniel Biss, the mayor, do hereby proclaim the week of September 24th through October 2nd, 2022 as National Diaper Need Awareness Week, and encourage citizens to donate generously to diaper banks, diaper drives, and those organizations that distribute diapers to families in need to help alleviate diaper need in Evanston and nearby communities. And I know someone here representing Bundled Blessings is here. If you don't mind coming up, I'd love to present you with this proclamation. Councilmember Reed.
I just want to plug with this. If you're looking for a place to donate diapers, we have mutual aid community fridges throughout Evanston. I think that's a great place. Peckish Pig has, or not Peckish Pig, but Palm House has one in the 8th Ward. There's one in the 9th Ward by Brava Kombucha. There's one by the family in the 2nd Ward. But CNA, what does that stand for? Child Care Network of Evanston. Yes. And then there's another one in the 5th Ward at Soul and Smoke, and I think that covers all of the Evanston mutual aid fridges. And so that's there's also a pantry area. You can put diapers and all kinds of stuff, and folks certainly will find it. Thank you.
Thank you. This brings me to my second proclamation of the evening, recognizing the 150th anniversary of Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church. The proclamation reads as follows: whereas Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church was organized in 1872 by German immigrants and is the oldest Lutheran congregation in Evanston, and whereas Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church maintained a parochial day school from 1880 until 1981 located at Lake and Ashland, which is now the home of Penny Park, and whereas worship services have been held at their present location at Greenwood and Wesley since 1886 and the present church was built in 1962, and whereas Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church supports their food pantry, Lutheran Church Charities, and Lutherans for Life, and whereas Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church is a member of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Campus Ministry, and whereas Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church continues their local mission to share the gospel of salvation, Now, therefore, I, Daniel Biss, Mayor of the City of Evanston, do hereby proclaim Sunday, September 25th, 2022, as Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church Day in the City of Evanston in celebration of the 150th anniversary. And if you could come up as well. This concludes my public announcements. Next on the agenda is the city manager's public announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments tonight.
Next on the agenda is communications from the city clerk.
We only received one email from Betty Esther. Received it pretty late, but that's in your inbox right now.
Thank you. This brings us to public comment for the evening. This evening, every commenter will have the full 3 minutes. There are right around 15 people who've requested to give public comment. As always, we'll begin with those individuals who signed up in person to speak in person, beginning with Libby Hill.
So, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Libby Hill. I live in the 6th Ward. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Bird-Friendly Evanston, which is very late on your agenda. We have many glass buildings in town and at Northwestern where people are seeing and picking up dead birds. We hope that this ordinance will mean that new buildings covered by the ordinance will lead to the safe passage for birds in Evanston, which is on a major flyway for fall and spring migrating birds. Birds are an essential pin in our ecology, the literal canary in the coal mine. Working with developers, we've learned that they would like to have standards up front to work with. If anyone wonders if patience is a virtue, I'm going to provide some proof. I look back at my records. Ever since the Francis Searle building was built at Northwestern in 1972, birds began hitting those reflected windows regularly. There was a great deal of concern among birders, but no action. There was no research then showing how glass could be made to appear safe to birds or how dangerous it was. It took 30 years until Evanston North Shore Bird Club began monitoring Northwestern buildings in 2002 with the cooperation of Northwestern. We brought in the major researcher on the subject, Daniel Klenn, who by then had researched the problem, to meet with them to explain solutions. And Daniel Klenn remains the biggest authority on this. In 2017, Northwestern opened the Glass Kellogg Global Hub, which stepped up our activities considerably. By 2019, Northwestern had announced that it would become a leader in being a bird-friendly campus in the United States. We continue to monitor the campus for live and dead birds that hit campus buildings, and we also look at buildings in downtown Evanston which present problems. The first record I have of our bird-friendly committee meetings was in January 2016 at Lucky Platter. By 2017, we had a draft ordinance. It's rewarding to know that patience pays off and that the time has come. Thank you all, council members, current and past, who have helped and encouraged us and urged us on. We stand ready to assist in any way in enforcement of the provisions of this ordinance, including education, continuing to meet with developers, and working in cooperation with staff and council members. So we urge you to vote yes to pass Ordinance 83-022, even if it isn't on the yellow agenda sheet. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Dana Waldrop.
Good evening. I'm just here to support my cousin, Chrissy Harris. I just want to say she's going to be an asset to the 2nd Ward as well as the entire city of Evanston. She's a hard worker. She's willing to do all the work. And I just want to say congratulations to my favorite cousin. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here for that. The next speaker is Matt Rooney.
Good evening. I'm Matt Rooney. I am the Vice President of the Board of Canal Shores, and I'm here speaking on behalf of Canal Shores. Your tenant on this land that's the subject matter of SP2, which is a motion to oppose an easement coming in from the south across our 10th green on the golf course. The Canal Shores Board looked at this and addressed this question, and we passed a resolution in June, which I'd like to read to you. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Canal Shores adopts the position that the best use of the Keefe land is for it to become a dedicated ecological preserve of old-growth forest, which Canal Shores would commit to manage, and is opposed to an easement off of Isabella Street in Evanston due to the destruction of ecological areas, including wetlands, the detrimental effect of the design on the design of the golf course due to its adverse location for sunlight and its substantial reduction in the size of the green, and its significant safety hazard, it poses for residents and cars. As I said, we are opposed to this easement coming in from the south. Mr. Keefe, there were materials you received with the motion that shows a schematic of how he expects this to look. He points out that he wants to come right across our green and take out no trees. So he's trying to make himself into a hero. What he's doing actually is making it so that the green gets moved back further from where it is now and made smaller, put in the narrowest part of the fairway where it will not get enough sunlight. And we would have to take trees out in order to put it there. So he wants us to be the ones that have to take the trees out instead of him. If he comes in from the south and we have to do that, we will end up taking out 4 or 5 large white oak trees, which are ecologically the most significant trees in the area. This is a wetlands area, and those trees are very valuable. We don't want to have to take those out. If we leave the green where it is, we don't have to take those out. You all know that he previously received the right to have an easement coming in from the north. This is Wilmette property, and that road would come in from the north, not through Evanston. And he apparently doesn't want to come in through the north, but he did get an easement there. If either of these easements takes place, it's going to be bad for Canal Shores. The second one, the one he's asking for tonight, coming in from the south, is much worse than the first one. The second one has a much more dire impact on the design of the course, and it also is bad ecologically. If he comes in from the north, he would have to take out 6 trees. None of them are these high-value white oak trees. 3 of them are junk
15
trees.
seconds.
15 are junk trees. 1 is a birch tree, and 2 are silver maples. So if he's going to move ahead with this project, it should be coming in from the north and not from the south. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Rafael Jaworovski.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I didn't actually intend to speak. I'm here just in support of the ARIV project, and other people are writing their names, so I wrote my name too. But while I'm here, I'll just say thank you very much for everyone who is participating in support of the ARIV project between Evanston Hospital and the Chicago Mitzvah Campaign Hospitality Suite. It's a very, very important thing for the Jewish community, and we thank you all for your support.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Joseph Keefe.
Good evening. I do have depictions if trustees would like to see the depictions of the proposed easement. I'll leave them here if that would be appropriate. Right here. I'm Joseph Keefe, representative of the Keefe Family Trust. We are the owners of the parcel of land abutting MWD property north of Isabella Street. Allow me to provide clarifications regarding the proposed resolution before you tonight. Our family has entered into an agreement to donate our property to Housing Opportunity Development Corporation for the purposes of building affordable housing there. My efforts to gain access to our property are devoted to that purpose. Currently, the property is landlocked, and the easement we seek will relieve that condition. 3 years ago, MWD approved an easement from the north from Maple Avenue. Working with staff from the Village of Wilmette, they've asked us to explore the option of moving the easement to Isabella. Our teams have outlined several reasons for this request. An easement from Isabella would not affect private properties. The Isabella approach will preserve the heritage trees along the 10th fairway. The Isabella approach will not require removal of trees, shrubs, or other plantings. The Isabella approach has a curb cut, and that entrance is already used for maintenance machinery. The Isabella approach will traverse already engineered land and will not disturb pristine or heritage growths in that area. Regarding the points in the proposed resolution, I offer several clarifications. Canal Shores is certainly a valuable community partner in the city of Evanston and a great steward of the open space property enjoyed by many people over the years. It is an important community asset. It is also a private business. It's a nonprofit with its own goals and missions, operating on public property. As a normal part of its operations, Canal Shores parks thousands of cars each year on unpaved public property. It would seem unusual for Evanston to permit this use of dozens of acres of open space while then opposing a roadway which will have a far less negative effect on existing green space. A roadway off Isabella, this is in the resolution as well, a roadway off of Isabella in Evanston would pose significant safety hazards to pedestrians and cyclists along Isabella. Canal Shores is currently bisected by 5 streets. 17 roads run parallel to the golf course or end at its borders. The proposed roadway would be identical in uses and purposes to the existing roads and will follow the applicable codes. A roadway would subtract, this is again in the resolution, a roadway would subtract open space that manages stormwater and conversely add impervious surface that would increase the burden of stormwater that the city and MWD must manage. The roadway will adhere to MWD's stormwater management ordinance. MWD has stormwater drainage systems in place and the road will not.
15 seconds.
Thank you. As you can see in the depictions, the proposed roadway would include moving the 10th green. The hole is constructed as a Part 3, and that status will remain. I emphasize that moving it to Isabella will preserve the oak trees in the wetlands to the north. Finally,
Your time is up.
thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ann Rainey. Welcome back.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. Well, I could talk about 6 items tonight, but I'm going to try and control myself. First thing I want to mention is that the 8th Ward has an e-roof, and we've had it for almost 20 years, I think, and I don't think anybody in this room probably knows where it is. So just that's to let you know that they are not intrusive. Second of all, I want to congratulate Chrissy Harris. I think that was a wonderful appointment, and I hope you'll all approve it. My name is Ann Rainey, and I'm a former alderman in the 8th Ward, and I want to say to Council Member Reed, you have done a fabulous job in keeping activities in the 8th Ward rolling. Tonight is a big night for the 8th Ward on the agenda. You have Estacion getting ready to amend the lease. Finally, after all these years, it looks like they're actually going to open. And if anybody has ever been to Libertad in Skokie, you will be really excited that they're going to open a restaurant at 633 Howard Street. And Estacion, of course, is reflective that this was the location of the first outpost, police outpost in Evanston years ago. Second of all, Palm House is going to be asking for a relief from having to go to Diaper every time they want to have an event. And they are having fabulous success. And so thank you for supporting that also. And finally, there was the matter of the Howard Street Affordable Senior Housing Building. And everybody agrees there was a failure to communicate the need for an adjustment in the plan development. And fortunately, the adjustment has nothing to do with the size of the building or the number of units or anything really structural in any way. The developer failed to notify about the change in the artist rendering that was submitted for the plan development, showing the fake wood composite material that looked like wood on the front of the building, and instead now we have what I really think is much more fun, and that is the bright yellow trim on the front of the building. And it is different, and it is not what was presented, but there was an 8-month delay in receiving the original proposed products, and that would have meant an 8-month delay in installing windows and an 8-month delay in putting people in the building. And as a result, we have a fully occupied building. It is so exciting. And if you haven't been in the building, please go. It's just amazing. People are living in that building who have never had air conditioning, who've never been in an elevator building before, and never been in a newly constructed building. So while there was a screw up, really, this developer was the most communicative developer ever. And how this happened, I don't know. But it made absolutely no difference in the structural product that was delivered. It just, it's a taste thing. And, there should have been communication, and there wasn't. So I'm asking you to overlook that and support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This now brings us to the folks who are signed up online to speak in person, beginning with Svetlana Beckman. If Svetlana is not here, we'll move on to Annie Coakley.
But I'm here, so I'll just come. Sorry about that. I thought I asked to present in person. Good evening, Mayor Biss, Clark Mendoza, and members of the City Council. I am Annie Coakley, the Director of Downtown Evanston, and I'm here to show support of the Downtown Evanston Board of Directors for item A9 on this evening's agenda, approval of a contract for Street Plus using American Rescue Planning Act funding. Oop. Sorry. Okay. I just want to make sure I get everything. A clean and safe downtown is welcoming. The streets and sidewalks are clear of debris, clutter, and graffiti. The streetscape is filled with beautiful trees, flower pots, benches, art, and nighttime lighting. The streets are lined with businesses, restaurants, gathering places, entertainment, and culture. We know every city is unique, but we know many cities face similar challenges. One of the most common challenges is providing a clean environment in high-traffic commercial corridors. Many of us here this evening have received calls and emails and read the comment sections in our local media that downtown Evanston is not currently a clean and welcoming place. There is an opportunity for improvement by hiring a dedicated clean team to provide enhanced services. Currently, downtown Evanston has a contract with a landscape company that provides annual plantings, watering of plantings, 5-day-a-week garbage removal, and 1 annual power wash. While we value the services they provide to keep downtown clean of litter, downtown needs a more thorough approach. As you will see from the Street Plus presentation or that you saw in your packet, their services go above and beyond what a landscape company can provide. The clean and team members are selected, trained, and expected to add to the friendliness of the places they represent, as well as pay attention to detail. A pan and broom, so cleaning up with pan and broom in all of the nooks and crannies of downtown. They also will clean fixtures of high interaction surfaces, empty receptacles, graffiti removal, and power washing, multiple levels of power washing, so an annual power wash plus spot cleaning for areas that are frequently grimy or dirty. Customers, visitors, and residents return to corridors that are clean, safe, and lively. Their recurring purchases and activity allow businesses to open, thrive, grow, and hire. This is applicable to every part of the city, but especially to downtown that has been so drastically impacted by the pandemic due to a lack of daily workforce foot traffic. As we work together to rebound from the pandemic, now is the time to invest in these services so we're able to put our best foot forward to prospective tenants and returning workforce and customers. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Peter Jones. he's not here, we'll move on to Francine Allen. No? Okay. Then we move on to Jackson Paller.
Good evening, Mayor Biss, members of council. My name is Jackson Paller. I live in the First Ward, and I will attempt to be very brief. I'm here to support the amendment to the Evanston Fair Housing Ordinance, I believe designated 79022, that I had thought was going to be on the agenda today. I think it'll be on the next meeting. I don't think there's much more that needs to be said other than what it does, providing increased protections for housing rights based on covered criminal history and a person's perceived status as a victim of domestic violence. I think this is just plainly a good thing to do, and it can make housing rights a lot more secure for a lot more people. And just wanted to add my voice to support, and I hope I see it past the next meeting on the 27th, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to reiterate, the three folks who signed up to speak in person who didn't answer the call of their name were Svetlana Beckman, Francine Allen, and Peter Jones. None of them is in the Zoom. Are any of the three of you here within the sound of my voice? Seeing that that appears not to be the case, we'll move ahead to those who signed up to speak via Zoom, who are Linda Del Bosque, followed by Mike Vasilko, and then Betty Sue Esther.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Just wanted to remind our council members, our city staff, that September 14th is Support Latino Business Community Day. So we're asking for our allies to support our Latino businesses. I did email Luke as well as Paul a toolkit created by the Department of Economic and Community and the minority for the state of Illinois. So they have it if they can distribute it generously to the business districts as well as to organizations and yourselves, and invite community members to join in to Latino Business Day on September 14th, which kicks off the next day, Hispanic Heritage Month. So I just wanted to let you know, just pipe you in, 4.4 million Latino business owners are impacted the U.S. economy every year, and it's growing. So we're asked for the support for the city of Evanston. I'm speaking to you this evening on behalf of the Evanston Women's Minority Business Center. They'll be opening up towards the end of this year. I've been working very hard with the state and the county to put programs and developments together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mike Vasilko, who will be followed by Betty Sue Esther.
Thank you. First, I just want to encourage everyone to support Luke Stowe in his new position as city manager. Me personally, and I hope others, want Luke to succeed to the full extent possible. My second comment is, what is the city going to do to clean up the chemically polluted vegetable gardens? Gardeners who unknowingly accepted free poisonous materials masquerading as fertilizer from MWRD. Will you begin a legal process to hold MWRD commissioners individually responsible? Because they knew what they were doing over a decade ago. The third item, with the budget season approaching, two things. I'm asking that Evanston's climate action person, the person who's responsible for that department, report to the council at each meeting, each monthly meeting going forward. There has been not enough, but kind of lip service regarding climate action, and you need to start taking a firm stand on that beyond a resolution that's tucked away in the files. The one thing you need to do with the budget discussion approaching is set an allowance every year for the next 10 years. By my estimation, in order to make any progress with eliminating fossil fuel consumption by the city and by its residents. You need to budget roughly $25 million a year for the next 10 years. And that's at the low end, I think, of what needs to happen. So I hope many of the council members will support that in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The final speaker is Ms. Betty Sue Esther.
Good evening. I'll be speaking on A3, HC1, and R1. All of these items has to do with the issue of the community resident not being fully vetted and allowed to have conversation around them. Having meetings at times and places that is not convenient for the resident is very difficult. In A3, the resident did talk about that area when the West Side TIF and the West Master Plan was being developed, and they said that they did not want it to be changed. There was a cry to keep it the way it was for the animal that was there, unless the new resident have outweighed the old resident and want it changed. I haven't heard, but I haven't heard too much from none of the residents. In HC1, the reallocation of the funds from the NSP2 had to be reallocated into the CDBG funds. Before that happened, those documents need to be opened. We are asking that you make those documents available to the community, so we have 30 days to review them to see if all of the requirements and issues that was raised during the NSP2 work have and was answered. There was complaint made to HUD. We did not see the results from that. So if you have those results and things in that document, we need to see it. So we are asking you, before you vote on that you make that available to the community to look at the whole document. With R1 resolution, the committee that people that is going to be appointed tonight, one of the things I didn't see and kind of
15
didn't
seconds.
hear was the people to that receive the service are not being placed on this committee. And a lot of the committee, we have the staff people from the different organizations, but not the people that receive the service. And they can speak to the value of the service and everything much better than the staff can. So those committees need to be looked at and appointed. The residents that is receiving the service that you are claiming going to benefit them. So if you don't talk to the resident, then you are not benefiting the resident. So the residents need to be heard from. And we at CNP urge you to listen and make opportunity to hear from your residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes public comment for the evening and brings us to special orders of business, beginning with item SP1. Would someone care to make a motion on item SP1?
I'll move item SP1 unless there is something already planned. I'll move item SP1, appointment of Chrissy Harris as the next council person of the Second Ward.
I'll second.
Councilmember Reed moves approval of the appointment of Chrissy Harris to the City Council representing the Second Ward. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion on this matter? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hirakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Well, with 8 voting in favor and none voting against, there's no tie for me to break, sadly. And the motion carries, and we have a new council member.
Solemnly affirm
That I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Second Ward Council Member
of Second Ward Council Member
to the best of my abilities.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Council Member. Because this is Evanston, we're not quite done. We don't take one oath around here. We take 2. So the next is the Athenian Oath of Citizenship. So.
Do I have to raise my hand?
Your call. Yeah. We will ever strive
We will ever strive
for the ideal and sacred things of the city,
for the ideal and sacred things of the city,
both alone and with many.
Both alone and with many.
We will unceasingly seek to quicken
We will unceasingly cease to quicken
the sense of public duty.
the sense of public duty.
We will revere and obey the city's laws
We will revere and obey the city laws
and will transmit the city
and will transmit the city,
not less but greater
not less than but greater
and more beautiful
and more beautiful
than when it was transmitted to us.
than when it was transmitted to us. Yes, thank you.
Do you have anybody who wants to come to the picture with you?
Yes.
Everybody's welcome up here.
I'll take my Thank you. Keep going in. Sure. Push the mic button. Whatever they say. You gotta push that button.
everybody. Thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
I know the time to speak was before, but who knows if the appointment was going to happen or not. So I wanted to make sure that it was final before I made comments. But I just want to say that I'm excited that Chrissy is joining us. Chrissy is someone who has spent essentially lifetimes, but a lifetime of service to our community. I first met Chrissy when I was a wee lad beginning in college at Oakton, where Chrissy worked at the time in the student activities office, and Chrissy was was so connected to the students and so involved in the day-to-day activities of students and making sure that students had everything they need, not only to be successful in school, but be successful members of the wider community. I'm just honored that we're bringing that experience and that passion and dedication for serving folks, for serving young folks on to our council. So thank you for joining us, and hope folks stick around and get to watch the real fun stuff, which is the discussions about policy and the votes that we're all taking. And I'm glad that you are a new representative of the voice of many folks in our community. So thank you.
I'll just add my voice to that. You know, when I first saw your application, I thought it was like a fake. How could one person have done so many things? The number of different community activities and groups and organizations that you were giving serious time to, right? Not putting your name on a list, but digging in, doing the work, bringing more people on board. It was really, really inspiring. And then, once the names of the candidates were made public, there was just such an outpouring of support for you from across the community. And then, when I had a chance to both speak with you and see the way you performed in the candidate forum, there was just such depth and such warmth there. I think it's going to be really, really a delight for all of us to get a chance to work with you. I do want to again thank all the candidates. It was a big, strong, impressive field. It was not, even after all the things I just said that were true, it was still not an easy choice because there were so many strong, impressive candidates, and I want to thank all of them for their dedication to the community. But just again, can't express enough how enthusiastic I am for us to have this chance to work together, and how confident I am that you're going to be just fabulous for the ward, for the whole city, and for this body up here as well. So thank you and welcome, Councilmember Harris.
Thank you.
If you care to say anything, certainly feel free.
My first official duty, pushing the button to make sure it's on. I just wanted to take a few moments to thank everyone, most definitely the mayor for making this appointment, but the city council for agreeing, because you could have said no. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the community in which I live and serve. They have poured so much into me that it makes this easy and effortlessly to be up here to continue to serve. I thank my family and friends who were here. They helped make who I am today. I'm going to try not to cry. I'm very excited and nervous and all of it. My dad is there, my mom is there, and I appreciate all the timeouts and all the punishments. It helped me become a better person, right? But today is very special also, as it is my stepfather's birthday. He passed away, it's been 15, 16 years. And when I saw that this was the day that the appointment was going to happen, it just made it that much more special. So I thank everybody. This appointment is not just about me, it's about the community, and I look forward to working with everyone. And I'm not sure if Peter's still in the audience, but I wanted to say thank you for all of his service, all of the council people that came before him and in the city in general. So thank you.
Thank you, and welcome again. This brings us to item SP2 on the agenda. Would someone care to make a motion on item SP2? Councilmember Ravel.
Yes, I'd like to move approval of Resolution 80-R-22, which would register the City of Evanston's objection to a roadway easement request through property owned by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago and leased by the City of Evanston.
I second.
Councilmember Ravel moves passage of Resolution 80-R-22. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Ravel.
Thank you. Well, I will just give a bit of background about this. The resolution addresses a proposal that's now under discussion. It's not yet before MWRD for a roadway easement across Canal Shores Golf Course from Isabella North to private property located in Wilmette. The owners, and you've met Mr. Keefe this evening, the Keefe Family Trust proposes to donate the property to Housing Opportunity Development Corporation to build affordable housing, in exchange for which the owners will receive affordable housing tax credits. The proposed roadway would be located on property that the City of Evanston leases from MWRD and subleases to Canal Shores. But MWRD is the body that ultimately has to approve the roadway easement that we're considering this evening. This may sound familiar because actually this is the third time that a roadway across MWRD property has been proposed and come before the council. So just really briefly, in 2017, the roadway that was requested was across Isabella Woods, an undisturbed oak forest with 55 mostly mature trees, providing a haven for local wildlife, diverting thousands of gallons of stormwater from the combined sewer system. The City Council in 2017 approved a resolution opposing this roadway, and the MWRD board denied the request at that time. Then in 2018, there was a request from a roadway from Maple Avenue in Wilmette south across the golf course to the private property. And Mayor Haggerty, on behalf of the City Council and residents of Evanston, sent a letter to the MWRD board expressing opposition to this second roadway request. On that occasion, the MWRD board did approve the request, and that roadway, as you heard this evening, is still in effect. And now we're considering a third roadway in this ecologically important area. And it's important, I think, to say a word just briefly about the Keefe property itself. It's not just an empty parcel of land. Like Isabella Woods, the Keefe property contains a remnant forest of many swamp white oak trees, providing a unique haven for birds and other wildlife. It's also seasonally inundated wetland, provides valuable ecological benefits, including storage for stormwater and habitat for a variety of wildlife, especially amphibians, meaning frogs and turtles and ducks, and ducks aren't amphibians, excuse me. But anyway, I'm going to pass a photo each direction so you can kind of see what it looks like in the springtime. Thanks. Basically, it would be really a shame to have that property developed. If approved, but we're talking about the roadway would pave over a sizable portion of the 10th hole of our community golf course and would have a detrimental effect on the design of the course, as you heard from Matt Rooney earlier this evening. The 10th hole is lined with 100-year-old oak trees, and many consider it to be the most beautiful hole on the whole golf course. The roadway would irrevocably harm the delicate ecology of this area. Stewardship of our environment at this particular junction, as we worry daily about climate change, stewardship of our environment and our natural resources has never been more important. And I ask you to approve the resolution registering our objection to this roadway.
Councilmember Reed.
Thank you. I did not have a chance to speak to you about this over the weekend, but I have had some time to look at this, and I was around previously in 2017 as clerk when this came before the council previously. And so I just have a few questions, and I want to understand. So you said there's an existing, or a roadway that was approved already.
An easement for.
An easement for a roadway, but the roadway has not been constructed.
Right, and you can see that on that map.
Okay.
I think that's the easement.
Okay,
That's
that would be the easement, and it would open up on Maple. Okay. And Maple is in Wilmette. Okay. And so what is stopping the Keefe Family Trust from building here by right?
Meaning building the road down from Wilmette.
The housing, and I guess, yeah, the road that would need to accompany the housing.
Right. Well, they need a roadway, they need access to the property because right now it's landlocked. So they've been encouraged by Wilmette to seek an easement from the south.
Okay, okay. You know, I'm going to fully trust your judgment and research here, and also folks that, you know, I also trust have reached out, Leslie Shad and others, and have reached out on this issue. I do think, you know, this is a golf course in some part, and typically I think I'd be on the side of replacing a golf course with affordable housing, because for a whole host of reasons that I don't need to get into now. I mean, to me, I don't know. I'd love to see you do something with it, particularly if you're going to do affordable housing. I get that there's the benefit of the tax credits, and I mean, the market is the market as it is today. So, you know, I guess take advantage of what you can to build affordable housing, which is a good thing. You could make money a whole host of ways, and doing it this way is a little better than others. So I'm going to support the letter. I don't think the city actually has a whole lot of power here other than just to say to the MWRD, please don't do this. So MWRD, please don't do this. And I'll vote yes for this. But I'd love to see if we can figure, or Wilmette can figure something out with these folks, because Wilmette, this part of Evanston and particularly Wilmette, desperately needs affordable housing. And I'd love to see affordable housing over a golf course, but we are where we are. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please take the roll on item SP2?
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hedakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes, and the city's objection has been registered. This brings us to item SP3, which is a discussion item, although actually a motion to accept and place on file would be in order.
I will move that we accept and place on file the 2022 class compensation and staffing analysis final report.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves that we accept and place on file the class and compensation and staffing report. Councilmember Nusma seconds. Ms. Fourier, do you want to?
Yeah, we have a brief presentation if you're okay with that.
For sure.
Sure. Hi, I'm Megan Fourier. I'm the HR manager, and with me is Jada Kent, our senior project manager from Baker Tilly. And on the phone is Caitlin Humrickhouse, who is a regional director with Baker Tilly, and they are going to give us a brief synopsis of the study and the final report. Thank you.
Okay. I guess I'll just ask you to advance the slides.
And just, I want to warn you, you're sort of not set up super comfortably in terms of your how you want to orient your body and how the mic is. So just try to be conscious of speaking into the mic, not only for those in the room, but also those watching at home.
Will do. Well, thank you for having us. My name is Jada Kent. I'm here from Texas. I might accidentally say y'all. We've got Caitlin Hummerkaus on the call, and she's going to be stepping in the last part of this presentation to talk about the staffing study. There's Caitlin, myself in the middle, and we had Allison LeMay on the call earlier today where we did the same presentation with employees to kind of let them know about the process and the results. So I want to give a high-level overview about what our process looks like, how we kind of came to the conclusion we've come to, and then end with the recommendations we're leaving you with. So our process follows these main phases. We started with data collection to just understand the kind of current state of the city, collected every piece of documentation we could that describes positions and the compensation of those positions, so job descriptions, pay plans, pay policies, handbooks, et cetera. We asked employees to complete a position analysis questionnaire. So where job descriptions may not be the most up-to-date, these documents were employees telling us in their own words what work is actually and currently being done in their positions. And we use those documents as the foundation for the whole rest of the study. First starting with a position review where we looked at job titles to make sure positions were called what they're doing. We also conducted a job evaluation, the point of which to ensure internal equity with positions, and I'll get into that a little bit more. We also did a market assessment to collect base pay information from peer organizations just to compare them to the city's position pay. And then we plugged all of that into pay plan development, where we built a brand new pay plan and plugged those positions in, and then wrapping everything up here now. So job evaluation, we have our own point factor evaluation called SAFE. The end result of doing a point factor evaluation is a total score for every job. So when we talk about establishing a hierarchy of your jobs relative to internal equity, it is that point, that number score just sorted high to low. And we come up with that number through these 9 compensable factors you see here. And this acts as a measuring stick. When you're comparing, looking at one department, and you probably know what the hierarchy is in that department, but as you look across departments, it may not be as obvious anymore where positions kind of fall against each other. So we use these 9 compensable factors to measure all of those jobs. The education, the experience requirements, the level of work that's performed, if they're working in hazardous conditions, lifting lots of heavy things, their independence to make decisions and act on them, and then if those decisions are mistakes, what's their impact on the organization, as well as supervision. So those 9 factors, 100% of the jobs were measured against, and the end result being a total score for every job. For the market piece, we didn't have market values for 100% of the jobs. We either didn't survey them all because we knew we wouldn't get it, or we tried to survey some and didn't get what we thought. So peer organizations, we looked at competitive and comparable organizations, and those are similar size, similar services, just, organizations you lose employees to and gain them from. So we make sure we're looking at that competition. For the private sector piece of the puzzle, we used published salary survey data. So it kind of, serves as that private sector representative. We had 3 sources that we plugged in there. And then the benchmark positions, like I said, some positions don't exist in every organization, so we tried to focus on positions we knew we would get a hit on. For data adjustments, once we collected that information back, work week, if there's an organization that has a 37.5 work week or a 40-hour work week, we're just bringing the data up to a common point in time. We would age the data if it wasn't for the current fiscal year. Usually it's just the Bureau of Labor Statistics that's behind, so we age that one. And then we do a cost of labor differential. So that's not cost of living, and I do have a slide that will get into that a little bit more, but it's a regional cost of labor differential. So the quality control, I want to point out no peers data was weighted. Nobody's more important than anybody else. We plugged all the data in and it had the same weight. We required at least 4 matches per benchmark. That's that quantity piece of the quality. If you're talking about a market value, it's just an average of the results. Without enough information, you have a conclusion that's not based on enough information. So what is a good match? The best practice is a 75% overlap in those duties and responsibilities, and so that's kind of the standard that we went by. So for those peer organizations, there were 14 public organizations identified, and we were able to collect data from all of them. They either completed the survey, sent their data back, or we found their information online, but we got data for all 14 of those.
For the published sources, we used Bureau of Labor Statistics, Comp Analyst, and the Economic Research Institute. And so those three are kind of acting as the private sector. For the cost of labor adjustment, these are the adjustments that we applied. So cost of labor is a little bit cost of living. It's more the supply and demand of labor in a given area. So unemployment and qualified workers in a given region. So at the top, you can see that Evanston's cost of labor differential is 107.9. The U.S. average is 100. So 107 is higher than that. For each of these localities, we took that cost of labor differential, and then in the far right column is what adjustment we made to that data. So as an example, City of Chicago, they're 111. We moved their data down 3.1%. And that's taking that regional influence out of the picture, getting down to here's the position they have that's the same as yours, and without the influence of the Chicago environment.
Do you want to use your mic?
Cost of labor is, yes. Yes, so down on the bottom, those last three are the published survey sources. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, we had the state cut, so that's 103.7. We have the U.S. average for Comp Analyst, and then Economic Research Institute, we're able to take from Evanston's locality. So all of that plugged in. Okay, so once we concluded...
I'm sorry, real quick, Councilmember Newsom, can you repeat that question? We couldn't hear you.
I just want to understand which direction the math was working.
Yes.
So using
Okay.
Chicago as a baseline, which is 111, compared to 100 being the average nationwide, I mean, Chicago cost of labor is more expensive.
Yeah. And so we're taking
Thank
the
you.
difference between Evanston and Chicago. So the distance between 107.9 and 111.
Which means the cost of labor in Chicago is higher than the cost of labor in
Correct.
Evanston.
Correct. Okay.
And just, I know this question is going to sound real dumb, but why are we doing that?
I mean, because cost of living is very volatile. CPI right now is up and up and up, but usually it's up and down and up and down, and cost of labor is slower to react over time.
Oh, so you're saying this is as if, this is just we shouldn't think of this as because of, this isn't like a smarter way of doing it than cost of living. It's just it's a number that is less noisy.
I would call it a smarter way. Because when CPI tanks, you don't take money away from people. Cost of labor is just steadier, more reliable. It's an average of cost of living over time, instead of it going up and down and up and down.
Yeah, I'm just, like, from first principles, it doesn't totally make sense to me, right? Like, so if accountants in Chicago are paid a little more than accountants in Evanston,
Mm-hmm.
why should that be relevant? Why does that mean that we should be paying
Oh, but that's what
water
we took
main
out.
fixer? Okay.
That's
all right.
exactly what we took out. So them being paid more is being taken out. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Luke, I think you might have shared something that was that might have been incited. I don't know. No, okay.
Okay.
I mean, it's insightful, but you repeated what you said.
Okay.
Okay, so getting into building the pay plan, we built a brand new pay plan from scratch. We're looking at one pay plan for all of the positions. Currently, there are several pay plans that are kind of moving at, step plan, open range, doing different things at different times. The point of this is to get all positions onto one pay plan, so everybody's moving in the same direction at the same pace. So an open range plan just means it's open from minimum to maximum. There's no defined steps in between. This one has 19 grades. The range spread, which is the distance from minimum to maximum, is 40% and then progresses to 50%. The midpoint differentials start at 9.75, and those increase as well. And that's the distance between the midpoint. So I also want to point out that when we build a pay plan, we're looking at the market results. The city's intention was to be at market, and so we align the midpoint of the pay plan to the market and build out from there. So we don't go and figure out what we want the starting to be. The midpoint is the anchor of the pay plan, and then we build out. So this is the same information just on a graph so that you can see how those grades stack up against each other, kind of where the overlap is and where it isn't. Some overlap obviously is healthy. Too much overlap, and you won't encourage employees to take on more responsibility and move up because they can make the same amount not doing that. So just making sure there's a healthy amount of overlap. And so then when we're talking about assigning positions to this new pay plan, we went back to the results of the job evaluation. So I know it's hard to see, but along the bottom represents the total SAFE scores, so that job evaluation score, and along the left side is going to be the market average midpoint. So each of these dots is a benchmark position where their job evaluation and their market data intersects. So you can just see the distribution of all of those benchmark positions with that blue line kind of going through the middle. The correlation between internal and external data is usually pretty high. This one was 88%, and that just means a manager is a manager, internally and externally. It's what we expect to see. The other lines show the pay plan that we've built. So that green line that's just running parallel to the blue line is the midpoint of the pay plan. We've got the maximum and the minimum, so you can see just how well your natural distribution of jobs are fitting in this pay plan. So I want to point out that these are benchmark positions. That means we had market data and job evaluation. There's some positions where we only had job evaluation because we couldn't get market. So for those, the job evaluation is the key, right? We know the internal value, and so if you've got two positions that have market data and you know it fits in between, well then you kind of know where it fits. So the next couple of slides are just the position assignments, and so I'll kind of zip through these because this is in the final report. And get to the piece of the puzzle that, you know, once we have those great assignments, now we're looking at the person in the position and how do we get this implemented? How do we get everyone onto the pay plan so you can adopt it? So the 762 employees that we had on the roster, looking at where they fall, their current salary is either below the pay plan, they're within their new pay range, or they're above it. So 69 employees had a salary that fell below their new minimum. Option 1 is looking at just moving those 69 onto the pay plan. So up to that minimum, everyone else retains what they currently have. That cost is about $261,925. And so that is just moving those 69 employees onto their minimum. Option 2 is looking at doing what option 1 is doing, but also giving a 2% across the board for everyone else. So those 676 employees would also get the 2%. Where you see the difference in pay between the 69, where it cost $261, and then on the second scenario, it cost $312. So if movement to minimum is less than a 2%, for some people it was like $50, they instead get that full 2%. So the point is no one gets less than 2%. So the intention of these implementation, and I want to point this out because we had a lot of questions about this from employees, it's only to adopt this pay plan, just to get people on it. So that's the framework you have going forward with, you know, the positions are defined by these pay grades and then moving employees through those ranges. So what I want to leave you with is just recommendations to pretty much adopt everything we did. The job titles, classification changes, the pay plan and the grade assignments, picking an implementation scenario that meets your compensation philosophy but is also fiscally sustainable, adopting recommended changes to pay policies. So if you think of your pay plan as like a map, the pay policies are the instructions for that map. We just changed your map. So you need to kind of tweak some of those pay policies, and we've worked with the city to come up with those. So we urge to adopt those to keep the pay plan meeting that compensation philosophy. But then this last recommendation is probably my biggest one, and it's to continue efforts like this, doing this class and comp study to kind of get things recalibrated, continue to review the market, making adjustments, and then merit increases to move employees through that range. And so with that, I will hand it over to Caitlin for the staffing study. Oh, you can, oh, I see what we're doing.
Thank you, Jada. You can stay in that presentation if that's okay.
You can just tell me when to go.
Yeah, okay, great. You can go on to the next slide, Jada. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you everybody for having me. I work in the same practice as Jada and led efforts around our staffing assessment. And our goal was to look at your organizational structure and staffing levels, conduct a benchmarking analysis using data from both nearby comparables as well as industry data for all of the available department functions that we have. You can move on, Jada. So we used 5 peer communities for benchmarking and organizational structure, both the organizational structure and your staffing levels. And then we used industry benchmarks from some very well-recognized sources for benchmarking. And I will say when we do benchmarking, it's we don't ever just say, this is the benchmark and that's what your staffing level should be. We understand that every community is different. So as part of this, we also did several focus group sessions and got really great representation from multiple leaders and staff within the city in every department that we looked at. Combined with the work that Jada and her team were doing, we get a really well-rounded picture of your staffing needs and your organizational needs. You can move on. Thanks, Jada. So what we found was really a need to increase staffing levels across your departments, mostly to allow for additional management capacity. We found that, throughout the years, staffing levels had been reduced to a level where you now have quite a bit of compression. So you have very high-level individuals, department directors, managers, supervisors, really doing some very tactical operational work. And so our recommendations are really focused around adding positions that allows for you to focus on more strategic things, allows for you to focus on, priorities of both the council and the expectations of your citizens. Go to the next slide, Jada. Thanks. So just to highlight some of these, for administrative services, we're recommending an additional 5 full-time equivalent employees, 3 of those being within facilities and fleet. So we actually looked at the amount of equipment and vehicles that they were maintaining. We applied an industry benchmark to that, as well as looked at comparables. And the needs there are really adding an additional lead mechanic and 2 equipment mechanics. In the parking area, really an administrative assistant to help with contract management, purchasing, things like that. And the goal of this position is that that would be a shared position with facilities and fleet. So 1 administrative assistant to support both of those departments. And then in addition of a IT manager. So when we looked at comparables, you really had a much smaller amount of mid-level IT managers. And this would really allow the department to focus on more pressing issues like cybersecurity and accessibility and things like that. So really key position there. And then going over to Parks and Recreation, adding an assistant director, again, looking at the comparables, you were missing that piece of the puzzle in terms of management there, as well as a management analyst. And so really allowing that department, as you all know, you have a very robust Parks and Recreation department, and allowing that department to really focus in on reviving some programming, really focus in on budgetary analysis and data analysis around citizen needs and demands. Okay, and then moving over to the city manager's office, adding an administrative assistant. In that department, there's currently no administrative assistant capacity there. And so adding that in, as well as a grant manager. So the recommendation here was to move grants management as a function into the city manager's office, just to give it a more organization-wide view and prioritization. And then in addition, add a grants manager to help take advantage of the amount of funding that is available right now, and to manage that in a strategic way for the city. And then looking at finance, adding an accounts receivable FTE, just from the capacity standpoint there, that's warranted, as well as being able to backfill and cross-train with the single accounts payable position that you have at the city right now to really provide you a little bit of redundancy there. And then to add a financial analyst. With a city your size and of your complexity, it's really would be common to have a financial analyst to help with things like forecasting, budget control, and strategic sort of data analysis for your departments. And then in human resources, adding a recruitment and retention specialist. So as we know, and as evidenced by some of the compensation work that Jada and her team are being asked to do, recruitment and retention is very important right now, right? Your personnel are probably your biggest line item. And so really adding that position to be able to increase the capacity of that department and focus on a really strategic area for you. All Great, go ahead, Jada. And then our last recommendation outside of the staffing was to, and I know that you had gone out to RFP for this earlier in the year, but to really work on developing a citywide strategic plan so that you can really align your priorities. And that way the city manager can help guide the direction for the city departments so that they have, they feel that they have unified goals to work towards and that they know where their department fits into the overall citywide strategic goals.
That's it. All right, well, that's it. All right, is there any questions that we can answer for you?
So we go now to discussion, beginning with Councilmember Reed.
Thank you. I really appreciate our city leadership and the Baker Tilly team, both Megan and our city manager and previous city manager, and the Baker Tilly team for this analysis. I don't think I blanked out any moment, but what was the cost? If we were to adopt your recommendations here, it seems like it would be about 15 or so staff, 10 to 15 new positions. What would the cost for that be?
For the staffing piece of the puzzle?
Yes.
Caitlin, do you know that, the answer to that one?
I don't know that we had those numbers in the final report, but it'll all be included in the budget.
Can you please talk into the microphone?
I don't know that we had all of those numbers in the final report, but it will be included in the budget memo.
Okay. And so I guess this is a question to Manager Stowe. Are you taking their recommendations and placing all of those recommendations into the budget?
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council, Luke Stowe, City Manager. We had some discussions earlier today at the staff presentation as well about that. I think there are needs above and beyond the 14 or 15 that Baker Tilly has highlighted. I think the key is that Baker Tilly's analysis, looking at the 5 comparable municipalities, that they identified these as the most compelling argument, these 14 or 15 positions in particular. My guess is, off the top of my head, it'd be, a little over $1 million for the 14 or 15 positions. But we do expect to bring forward additional positions above and beyond that.
Okay. And I hear that you all are saying that we should build these kinds of reports into some sort of regular practice that the city engages in. So I wonder why, I think, it is certainly we are in a metropolitan market, but I think, as we saw, I think with our city manager search and other searches that we've done, we're not just competing with Skokie or Wilmette or our neighboring communities. We're competing with communities like Evanston across the nation. And I would love to see us, in the future, as we engage in this process again, look at communities similar to Evanston, but maybe in another state, and in other areas as kind of our competitors, because I think some of our, particularly our executive level and director level positions, we could be pulling folks from across the nation. I think we want to make sure that we're remaining competitive, not just regionally, but nationally. That was really I wanted a cost estimate, and particularly for the high priority positions. I do think, as Manager Stowe said, there are a whole host of positions that I think we would like to add, and we have to be able to prioritize. I think I agree, particularly, I think it's likely all needed. I trust the analysis, but particularly the positions that were in the high, I don't know what word you use, but in the, say it again.
Priority.
Yes, exactly. In the high priority category, that those positions are definitely positions that I'd love to see included in the budget, that I think we desperately need in the budget. And the medium priority positions, I think I'll leave that up to the discretion or to the judgment of our city manager and city staff, but certainly want to see those high priority positions. I fully agree that those are what we need. That's it for now.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm seeing that the high priority recommendations are in 3 departments. Those 3 departments do not include public safety, public works, library, some other departments. Did you look at those other departments as well? And so they were part of the analysis, and you've identified these priorities, which happen to be in these 3 departments.
All departments except for police and fire for the
Except for-
staffing study.
Okay. Okay.
Salary, but not staffing for them.
You look at salary for everybody, but not staffing for them. Okay. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Ravel.
Oh, well, just one question, and I don't know if you all can answer that. I mean, we've had a lot of loss of staff over the last few years, and I'm wondering whether some of these positions used to be filled, and we just need to get back to filling them up again, or are some of these actually new, really additions to staffing levels that we didn't have before?
I think I can speak to that if you'd like. A number of them are positions that we used to have that were eliminated over the past decade, and we're looking to refill those positions. And I just also want to remind, the last classification compensation study that we did was back in 2012, and that study was not largely implemented either. And I probably would ask Ms. Kent what she thinks is a recommended cadence for implementing compensation classification studies.
Yeah, to do a full class and comp every 5 to 7 years. If you keep up with your market adjustments and your merit, then that next 5 to 7 years won't hurt as much. So, but to make sure you're recalibrating everything every 5 to 7 years. Unless you have a lot of changes all at once, then probably a little sooner.
Councilmember Hercaris.
Luke asked my question.
No one else is seeking to speak for the first time, so we'll go back for second round, beginning with Councilmember Nusma with 4.5 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you're recommending a 19-grade pay plan. How does that compare to what we have now?
What you have now is a lot of different pay plans. Some have step plans. I mean, obviously you have to work with the unions to make sure this is going to work for them as well. But there's a lot less administration, number one. Everybody is in the same pay plan. A lot less ambiguity about who gets what, when, where, why. Everybody gets the merit increase. Okay, you know their scale. And the scale moves, everybody gets the same thing. So there's just a lot more equality, I guess you can say, because you're working from one playbook.
So is the current pay plan or series of pay plans, is that mapped out in a similar way that you have mapped out your proposed pay plan?
Not in a way that says, here's what you have and
Okay.
here's where we're bringing
If you
We
did
just-
that, I'm kind of inferring that the current one would look very jumbly, messy,
Yeah,
chaotic, and
they're
bad.
union influenced for some of those, so yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And with 2 minutes left, Councilmember Reed.
Thank you. So I asked earlier the cost for new positions. I guess I also left out the other question of the cost to bring folks up to their proper pay scale to parity with what they would be, maybe receiving in the market elsewhere. Do you happen to have that estimate?
So the two options that we prepared, the first one is just to get everyone onto the pay scale. The 69 people moving into that minimum is about 261,000.
Okay.
Everyone else would retain their existing salary in that plan. And I want to point out, those 676 employees that are already falling within means the city's been doing a relatively good job at keeping pace with the market because there's not more people who fell below.
And then the other plan, so there's 261,000 for one, and then what's the other option?
I think it was about 1.4 off the top of my head. And that's
1.4
giving
million
it.
if we were to do what? I'm sorry.
2% increase for those 676 employees.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, and what is, well, since my time didn't see it, I did give it up, but since it's still here, what is the absolute, what is our lowest paid employee making?
No idea.
Do you have any? And I ask this because I would love to see the floor raise. I think as a municipality, we shouldn't be paying certainly below a living wage to any resident, and I put in a referral to set the city's our own internal minimum wage at a living wage, and I'd like to see us make sure that, you know, even for the lowest paid employees, the folks who we would traditionally pay minimum wage, that we're giving them at least a minimum or a living wage if they're working for the city full time.
I would wager to guess that our lowest paid employees were not contemplated in this survey. The survey included full-time employees and permanent part-time. A lot of our temporary and seasonal staff would be generally receiving compensation at a different rate. That's absolutely something that we hope to extrapolate from the scope of the survey, but in order to keep the cost of performing this survey down, we limited the scope of what we could analyze.
Okay, and then last question, because Councilmember Newsom asked this, why was the police department and fire department not included in the staffing analysis?
So again, in order to keep the cost of the survey done, we have, it was much easier to include, it was much easier to exclude public safety from the staffing analysis. I think we are able to determine our staffing needs more appropriately for public safety, and we needed much more outside assistance in determining appropriate staffing levels for the other departments in the organization.
Thank you. And then has my time is probably up. Has Baker Tilly done conducted a staffing review for public safety departments, for police departments?
Yes, we have. We have public safety experts that we use as part of our project team to conduct those studies.
Have you all ever looked at a police department and determined maybe their staffing was over what they needed? Is that something you've come across in the past?
Yeah, sometimes it can go either way. And it really depends on the service level expectations of the community. So there's a lot that goes into play, especially with sworn police.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Seeing no further, Councilmember Kelly.
Just one question. Whose decision was it not to include public safety, fire, or like seasonal workers? I don't think we as a council decided we didn't want that included, right?
I think we were just looking for a cost-effective way to do this. This project wasn't budgeted. We ended up coming here. I think it was voted on by council last year, the scope of this project, and it was a way to make it an affordable cost study.
So we voted not to include those bodies? Okay, thank you.
Seeing no
Mayor, I have a question.
Councilmember Burns.
Nice, thank you. Were you able to, is there a document that I can look through that, and maybe it's this, but explains how those higher priority staffing decisions were made, or why, how, et cetera?
Yeah, there is a final report that Caitlin's team has prepared that kind of walks through the details of the staffing analysis.
Okay, and is that because we received some of this tonight, so is that it's like a 25-page document we received, or there's a much longer?
That should be it.
That should be it, okay. And does it break down also all the other departments and why they were lower priority, or like community development is what I'm really interested in, for many reasons. So does it talk about the lower priority areas and why they were lower priority, or does it just focus on why the higher priority ones were determined?
Yeah, and I went for the departments where we didn't recommend adding budgeted positions as part of this study. There may still be positions that are going to be included in your budget that just weren't in our study, but for the departments where we didn't recommend, it was because after discussions with those department directors and that staff, and then a benchmarking analysis, there just wasn't the justification from our report to add additional staff for the positions that we were focusing on. So it's not that for our study, they were, I guess, a lower priority. We still looked at them. We just didn't have the recommendation to add staff.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hedakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes and the report is accepted and replaced on file. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This brings us to item SP4. Would someone care to make a motion on item SP4?
I move that we accept staff's recommendation to
Hop on the mic.
accept and place on file report regarding ARPA funds, capital improvement fund, and the general fund balance.
Second.
Councilmember Nguyen moves that we accept and replace on file these staff updates. Councilmember Newsma seconds, and now we have, I believe, a presentation. Is that correct?
Our budget team is sitting, so I presume not.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and Clerk Mendoza, City Manager. ARPA update. It's been a while since we've gone through here and talked about what's going on with ARPA, but there's been a lot of changes. And I've tried to summarize them here without getting into the chart that's in the packet, which is a little bit mind-boggling. But this past March, when you approved the ARPA plan, we had about 51% of our money at that point allocated to specific uses. We're now up to having $33,233,301 allocated. So that is about 77%. I just want to point out that that includes two items that were on the agenda for tonight, so that these are allocated or requested, which is the privately owned portion of lead service line replacement and the $508,000 for the Street Plus Business District. The other amount that it includes is a request for the Welcoming Center that will be coming to council later, but is moving through the Housing and Community Development Committee. The Social Services Committee, wrong one. It also includes $3.5 million of participatory budgeting as allocated, although it has not been allocated to specific activities. That's in progress. There have been some changes. They did the final rule, and that came out in January. And then 3 months later, they came out with some new categories, and that has changed where we classify things when we are reporting to Treasury. An important thing we also did was we calculated our lost revenue for 2021. Now, the importance of lost revenue is it changes, or in this case, it increases the amount of money that we have in the replacement revenue category from, we had estimated $12,500,000. It was actually a little over that for 2020. But we got another about $7.9 million calculated in 2021. So the total replacement revenue we can use is $21,122,178. That doesn't mean you have to change the buckets or move things, but it does give us some safety valves and some flexibility. Treasury hasn't monitored anybody as far as I can tell from what everybody said, but they could monitor people and or municipalities and decide that some of the things we did don't fit in the categories we put them in. Well, if we have a cushion in revenue replacement, then it's revenue replacement, then we're fine. There are a few other flexibilities. They changed the way they are looking at impacted and disparately impacted people. So it gives us more flexibility in the way they outline the categories. It makes it clear that we have different flexibilities on how we fund certain things, which could include housing programs. It also means that with that replacement revenue category, if there is a need to do 2023 budget balancing, as there was in 2022, we would be able to do that. On July 25th, Treasury came out with a 6-page memo, shortest thing I've ever seen from Treasury on this, about changes in housing and how we can use money for housing. Lo and behold, they decided that long-term loans actually work for housing. Now, understand that the loans can, especially when combined with tax credits or some specific other enumerated federal program, there's no question that we can use long-term loans. And there are very specific affordability periods of requirement and also the length of the loan period. So that gives us greater flexibility there, which should make our lives much easier if we're layering funding in with tax credits or anything like that. They also allowed pre-development costs, including property acquisition for affordable housing, which was not itemized or enumerated at all before. As I mentioned, they did away with the disparately impacted communities category, and many of those items moved into other categories. Most of them went into negative economic impact, and they created a new public health negative economic impact public sector capacity category, which is quite a mouthful. What that allowed is when we're rehiring public service staff, that doesn't have to come out of replacement revenue anymore. It comes out of this eligible category. So all of this stuff has moved around. 5 activities moved from disparately impacted communities. 1 went to public health, and that's the youth violence intervention. A number went to negative economic impacts. That was the McGaw YMCA residence renovation, one-stop shop, family-focused rehab, and the welcoming center would be there. Talked about the new public health, public sector capacity that moved out of rehiring public staff, replacement revenue. And we had another thing come up. We got an earmark for solar installations. But with the earmark came a match. How inconvenient. How are we going to come up with $500,000 match? Well, we figured out, because this is for solar installations, largely on affordable housing, we can put $500,000 of our already approved one-stop shop funding into revenue replacement, where it serves as the match. That's the only way you can do a match for federal programs with other federal money. We also, I'm recommending that the lead service line replacement money that was allocated, was $1 million for buying equipment, to put in the city-owned portion of the lead service line, be moved into replacement revenue because it involves acquiring capital equipment. And when you acquire capital equipment, you are supposed to get the approval of the agency through whom the funding is coming before you do that. I emailed Treasury with all the details and why it made perfect sense, because we had 12,000 lead service lines to replace even after the period of performance. And one of the reasons that the federal government doesn't like this kind of capital investment, this capital equipment purchase, is they don't know how it's going to be used after the period of performance of the grant. So they really don't, they would rather we rent vehicles or lease them. That doesn't really make any sense in our situation. But Treasury wouldn't respond with anything other than providing us the guidance that they'd given us on Treasury's stuff. They didn't answer our question. So my recommendation is just to move it there so they can't disqualify it. We deleted 2 funded activities. We had $575,000 for contact tracing, but Ike and his troops got money through the state and the counties, so at this time we don't see a need for that. And the match that was for the Chicago-Orrington streetscape, we did not get that grant, so that match went away. So that was about $440,000. So it resulted in, and this is just the summary, kind of new categories. As I say, this is for reporting purposes. We can still consider the funding as we've allocated it in our own plan, but I wanted to show you how it actually will show up as we report to Treasury. So if all of the things that are in the pipeline are approved, we have $9,940,483 left to allocate. Any questions?
Any discussion? We begin with Councilmember Reed. Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
Whoa, I'm sorry. I got one question.
Councilmember Burns, followed by
Quick.
Reed.
Councilman Reed, I expected you to, per usual, to say something.
He did the thing where he waited for someone else to go first.
Okay. So, are there any projects, as far as the $9 million goes, are there any projects that staff is considering, or is this just completely unencumbered at this moment, the $9 million?
Well, I did get an email from another department that I haven't really had a chance to look at yet that has to do with a potential another workforce development thing. There are other projects that have been discussed but are not in a position where we've actually done a great deal of assessment with them. I think there are always people who have other ideas on how we're going to spend it, but none that have been specifically brought forward in the form of memos and things to bring to council yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, the reason I deferred is because I thought we were also going to discuss not just ARPA, but our general fund. So I do have a few questions. Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation on ARPA. Councilmember Nusma and I were just discussing this at his ward meeting, so we were a little off. We're a few $1 million off. We've spent and allocated a little bit more than I think we projected at your ward meeting, but we've still got a good chunk left, and I'm glad to see that we also have some wiggle room with a revenue replacement, because I think that's going to be critical for the city moving forward. But turning to our general fund and our budget team, because that's a part of this.
Actually, the next topic we'd like to talk about real quickly is just a capital improvement fund reserve, and then Hitesh will be up to talk about
I'm sorry.
the general fund.
I heard the mayor calling the vote, and so that's why I thought we were.
No, there's 3 items on this, so we only got through the first one, and the next one would be the capital improvement fund reserves, and then the general fund.
Yep, good to go then.
I don't actually have a presentation, but if somebody had any questions, I will say that next week we have a special city council meeting that is scheduled to delve more into capital fund issues.
Okay, just as a preview to that, we're still $100 million unfunded capital improvement liability?
Yes.
Okay, we haven't made a dent in that over the year.
I don't know that would ever go away, no matter how much we fund.
Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. So yes, I do have a brief presentation. I think I have included few slides in the packet which I sent you, and I have some of the additional with some scenarios which gives you just an idea that how the things look like. So while he brings up. Okay. Thank you. Anderson. So this is the, kind of the real numbers, general fund balance. I think even I included this slide a few months back in, I think, the mid-year financials. So we have, like, if you see the numbers right there, total fund balance as of 2021, 31 million, our requirement of 16.66. So we took that out, $1 million, which is used as a fund balance, which is not a true revenue. So we say, we have a 10.7 excess as of December 31st, which is the audit report, audited numbers. And council has approved those following few items: transfer to CIP fund for waste transfer, CIP for maintenance, fire truck purchase, back park improvement, and solid waste fund, $1 million, so that we can minimize the increase in the solid waste fund. So those are some of the items, and obviously you have seen the Baker Tilly, we have so much uncertainty about the personnel cost because of the staffing analysis, compensation analysis, union contracts. They are all expiring this year, so we don't know, and then the whole labor market, that, okay, how we kind of adjust the market. So that's why I have a TBD. And the last one is important too. Use of ARPA fund, I think, is someone asked on unencumbered money. Last year, we balanced the budget by using $4.25 million as a revenue from ARPA fund to general fund. So that is one of the consideration, besides obviously any projects in the water fund or sewer fund, which can fall in any, the unrestricted category to use the ARPA fund. But this is one of the big thing, whether we will have ARPA funds available to use to balance the general fund for 23. This is the fund balance policy. I mean, while I was looking at it, and I know this was a lot discussed 10, 12 years back when post-recession in 2008-9, and so many communities kind of that revised that time, and I was looking the last week. We are at 16.66, Bartlett 25-35, 235%, Schaumburg 40, Naperville 20, Hoffmannsted 25, Des Plaines 25, and Niles 40. So I think we are at the kind of, lowest end, and I think some of them, I remember at that time, raised their kind of the fund balance policy as a percentage of the general fund operating expenditure. Now, this is the scenario, just one thing different from the previous slide, that, okay, if we go to the minimum number which we saw earlier, that Naperville had 20% and quite a bit communities had 25%. We need to save extra $3.9 million to bring it to a $3.9 million out of that $10.7 million excess as of December 31st, if the council thinks that, okay, we should change policy to a 20% of our general fund expenses. July 30, 22, the numbers, I think I did mid-year. These are updated for one more month. We are doing pretty good. Fund balance as of July, 47 million. Obviously, a lot of revenues have come earlier in the part because of the spring, summer, including the building permits, transfer tax, property tax first installment. And even in parks and recreation, most of the revenues. The last few months, we typically call it a dry, when we don't get some of those revenues because of the weather, and then in a regular year, we don't have even property tax revenue coming during those months. So obviously, those numbers would go down. This is just a kind of trending high. You see a lot of revenues doing pretty good. Athletic tax, gas utilities, income tax, transfer tax, personal. Revenues on track, sales tax, home rule sales tax, use tax, they are kind of at, just little above, or maybe I would say on track, but we'll have a better picture after we get some of those later months. And trending low is the telecommunication tax. Property taxes, obviously, because we don't know the future of the second installment, and the motor fuel still.
But that's a timing issue, not a dollar.
Right. Okay. You're right. But in July report, so that's why I'm telling. Yes, you're right. Absolutely, Mayor. This is the projection that, okay, based on now and looking at the 3 months, like a little bit. So you would see that revenues, we would still do a lot better at 107%, and some of them would be a lot better at 113, 108%. Expenses would be like pretty close, 101%, and we could have a surplus of $7 million for this year, 2022. 4-year projections. Now, this is the thing, and we heard in the past, last year, I think we presented 3-year projections. Finance and Budget Committee, we have a good discussions about the long-term projections. And so what we did here, I think this is a little kind of a clumsy, but we try to put it in here. And we use that 7 million surplus, and we say, okay, how we do that? So the very last line, you see general fund balance excess, if you can read that, which starts with 11.9 million, then 18 million, then 10 million, 11 million. Looks good that, okay, we are trending above. And as you see, if you go into 2024 and 25, we are running even in 25 negative numbers. Obviously, this is based on the assumption which you would see on the red, that assume increase for all expenses at 3% and all revenues at 2% except property tax. So we are thinking that, okay, our corporate levy in general fund would stay flat. We won't increase that for the next 3 years. But so this is the kind of, City Council should kind of look at long-term, particularly with the goal of stable finances, that where we would in the next 3-4 years. In the other scenario, the highlighted one, I said, okay, if we don't do 7 million, maybe we have some little bit, more expenses because of the snow, some contingencies, and we just end up with a 5 million surplus in 2022. So the numbers you would see that the last line, that how much we would be in excess of that, and the line before that, you would see the numbers. It roughly changed by $2 million. It went down. Same thing, the little better than what we estimate right now. Okay, how about if we end up with a $10 million surplus this year? And you would see the numbers. But again, the important numbers are the last couple of columns. What would happen in 25, 26? Even we would be below the 16.66% fund balance. With that assumption of expenses going roughly 3% up each year and the revenues going up only 2% except property tax.
If I may interject, why are you making...
Can we...
I'll let him go finish.
Let's hold questions until the end. And though I did not model that well, and I apologize.
This is the personal cost. You saw some of those things. This is like a general fund 2022 budgeted cost is 74. Now, when I say this is everything, wages, overtime, all kinds of overtimes, FICA, Medicare, all benefits, like we have almost 15 different line items. And that's the budgeted numbers. And if I put the overall increase, 3%, 4%, and again, when I say increase means matching with the market, COLA, everything, just to give you an idea that, okay, overall increase comes down to, say, 3% of our 22 budget or 4%, you would see that. And then I added 2 different scenarios that, okay, if we have 15 new position as a 100,000 average, 150,000 or 25 position at 100,000 average, what would be so the last number, which would give you the total number with increase for 25 position, and right before that in the bold, you would see total with all increases with the 15 position. So you will see that in general fund, 22 budget is 74. If we go with 3% increase minimum, and that includes everything, with the pensions and benefits, and we add 15 new position as roughly $1 million, the cost would go up to $78.2 million from $74.5 million. So roughly, total increase is roughly around $3.7 million. And that's why I put the 3, 4, 5, 6% overall, so council gets an idea. Summary major items, yes. One of the things which I have highlighted, second installment of properties tax, I still don't know. And that's why we have a line of credit items through finance and budget, so we'll keep it that open in case we need to use it and when we need it and how much. Second thing which I just brought it up, ARPA fund as a transfer to general fund parking and equipment replacement for 23 budget. That's how we kind of, balanced our budget last year, or this year, 22. General fund, we gave some money to parking and obviously equipment replacement for the vehicle. Inflationary trend resulting in higher tax revenues, these revenues could go down. And this is kind of, we have talked about when we meet in the finance directors or others that yes, some of the sales tax, use tax looking so great, but if it comes down to a normal inflation of 2.5–3%, those revenues could fall. Maintenance items, yes, we continue to look at that where we can, get this for this year we moved almost $1 million of expense out of the CIP But now what that means is it has gone into the general fund side. Personal cost for 23, we talked about that. Sometimes there be a payment for legal settlements, land building purchase, we see, I mean, you would know a couple of big settlements coming in the pipeline. We have seen some. So sometimes that means what? The increased transfer from general fund to the insurance fund to pay for those settlements, legal fees and all those. Increased cost in fleet because of the fuel cost, mechanics, equipment, all that, and the equipment replacement fund. We heard the last time, I think, talking about the electric vehicles, and that cost more. And so that might be a higher transfers from general fund to the equipment replacement and fleet fund because that's how they are funded. And the last thing is considering the council goal of stable finances, keep the excess fund balance in general fund to fund the CIP projects, avoid or minimize fee and tax levy increase, and maintain the current staffing to provide the same or increased level of service. And that is very important, to keep the money in general fund so we can, kind of check on those, future tax increases or even some of those, use the money for the long-term CIP funding. This is the budget calendar I think we have shared. And I think that's, okay, I'm done.
Thank you. We begin with Councilmember Kelly.
I'm sorry, now I don't remember what my question was, but we have access to this PowerPoint.
What's that?
Was this in our mail?
I mean,
Thank you, okay.
Some of them, yes, but I will be posting it on that.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
We'll go back then to Councilmember Reed with 4.5 minutes left.
Thank you. So I remember the 47 million from the mid-year update. Do you have the number including August now?
I mean, we would update, we would have the numbers. I haven't run the reports yet.
You have, okay, we don't have
Because
the.
what happens is like the August payments, like particularly all the businesses, they can file their return by 20th of the next month. So now we would have, next week, we would have all the numbers.
Next week we'll have the numbers for that. Okay. Question that I had was, why do you assume a 2% revenue increase and a 3% expense increase? So I guess you answered the 3% expense, that's your cost of living, COLA, all of that. So why just 2% in revenue increase? Where did that assumption come from?
I mean, again, the sales tax and all thing, in the past, if you look at last 10, 15 years, we have even lost the revenues, and big time, after 2008. Sales tax, use tax, all those activities, and most of our revenues are tied to the economic activities, So if we lose that, we might have some reductions there. But still, I'm projecting that, okay, we will go thinking that, okay, there won't be any recession or there won't be any downturn in the economy, and we will be like, making a steady progress.
Has some of our sales tax revenue been accounted for in the use tax from the state?
No,
There's some of our sales tax revenue lost because the use tax is, we get money from, the Amazon package, right? That's where the use tax revenue comes from?
That's like a lot of, technical things, the way the state have changed the laws. And this is some of those things. Like if you order something online and Amazon ships it something from Kankakee to you here, Kankakee gets the tax. But if they ship it from outside of the Illinois, then the Evanston gets the tax.
Okay.
So it's like a lot of things, and I think that even some of those big vendors, they are reacting to save the tax and using that low tax-based cities.
So we only get the use tax if it's from out of state, not if it's from Skokie to Evanston. If it's Skokie that originates, then they get.
If it's a warehouse, Amazon warehouse anywhere in Illinois, that warehouse place would get the tax.
We need a warehouse on Howard Street to get us some of that revenue and ship it right out of Evanston. Okay. I have another question. So thank you. That's helpful information. So you mentioned there that some communities I don't know. There we go. For example, Schaumburg or Niles, that they reserve 40% of their general fund in
the projected expenditure. And a lot of communities do that, and particularly, as I said.
Do you think that's somewhat, Do you think that's somewhat extreme, given, that we should be having the taxpayers' money not just kind of hoarded away in city bank accounts, but actually out working for the community? Do you think 40% might be too much?
40% might be too much, but why it happened, as you see the history, that we had almost 5 years of recession post 2008, and they say, okay, we got to save, and now see the thing where they helped them. Like in 2020, we lost the revenues, right? So obviously we have to look on the expense side. All the non-unions, the union people, most of the union people, we took the furlough days. Skokie didn't do that. I mean, I talked to 5 different finance directors, say we are not taking any furlough days because we have 40% fund balance, and we are going to draw upon that. So that's where, those kind of things happen. And particularly, the COVID was, yes, maybe we would say that once in a lifetime or once in a century, but recession, I mean, that could hit, that it's an up and down cycle if you see the last 50 years. So it could come back in 10 years, and we might have to have the money.
Do you think our 16.66% is inadequate? Or?
I mean, yes, I would say that's why I put it this one.
So you think we should go up to 20%?
20%, yeah, that's more reasonable. 2.5 months kind of a. That's why I didn't. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You think the new goal should be 20%? I think, was the 16% before your time, or was that during your time?
Even, I mean, we have been doing good 16, but we had the times where we had I think 10%.
Yeah, I know. We just hit the 16%, and now it's like, well, now the goalpost has moved. I thought we were doing good, and now we're got to go up to 20.
I mean, you make the decision. I mean, I'm not. I'm just kind of sharing the data, yes.
Okay. And then, so when you say, because earlier in the year, and I'm hoping your earlier projection was right, that we might end the year off with roughly 30 to 35 million in the bank. Are you still in that realm, if that's what we're going to end up with?
Right, so that's where I took the scenarios here. This is the one with the 7 million, that if we end up 2022 with the 7 million, what would be our excess fund balance, which would be 18. So total balance would be 38. This one is that, okay, if we have some snow events, some contingency, and 5 million, then we would have 36.6 million. And then this is I think the most optimistic, I would say, $10 million surplus, we would have 41.6 million.
So why would a $10 million surplus be 41? Because the surplus is the money over the...
No, I'm not talking surplus, total fund balance, 41 million.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that $10 million surplus would be $10 million over the 16.66.
I'm talking about 10 million 22 operating surplus.
Operating surplus. So that's
22. So here's the numbers, your numbers. Total fund balance would be 41.6 at the end of 22. We need to keep 19.6 as a fund balance policy if we stay with 16.6, and the excess would be 20.9 million as of 22 end.
Okay, so really the surplus, not the operating surplus, but the actual general fund surplus wouldn't be, even if we're going with the $7 million number, it wouldn't be $7 million is the general fund surplus. The general fund surplus would really be
$18 million.
$18 million.
But again,
okay.
These calculations are based on the 21 numbers, which is a lot of them have been used. Like if you see this thing. Yeah.
So what is the significance between the operating fund surplus and just actually having? Because I mean, if I end up my year with my expenses several $1,000s over, if I've got
so
tens of thousands of dollars in the bank, I actually have tens of thousands of dollars, not just a few $1,000s.
So this is operating surplus. What it means is 1 year's revenue less 1 year expenses. So in this case, 7 million is called operating surplus for 22. But it's not a fund balance total. This is just for that year.
But I guess what I'm really asking is, isn't the just surplus the more important number? The general fund surplus, is that not a more significant number?
I mean,
than
what
just...
you're talking about, like, okay, two different things, and every number has its own value.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I say, okay, we ended the general fund with 7 million, the next thing, at least in our finance day, we talk about, okay, then it is, what is your fund balance? That means what is your cumulative number? 7 million is your operating surplus for that 1 year, But what is the fund balance? And then as of now, I say, yes, I have a fund balance of 47 million, which I'm like showing at the July numbers, right?
Sure.
Right here, yeah. So if you see here, what is the difference? Year-to-date net 16.4 right now as of July, that is the operating surplus, versus 47 million is a fund balance.
Sure.
But again, when I come to these 47 million numbers, obviously it is based on the assumption of the same number as of 21. But you have already approved like, I think $4 million, you know? So, yeah, assuming that you won't spend any more out of the excess, yeah, fund balance.
I guess I'll just make this last point, I think, for my colleagues, which is just...
And we can talk offline. Too,
yeah, we can talk
one-on-one,
offline,
yeah.
but I guess the point I'm really trying to make here is that, you know, we may have a $7 million, and that's on $5 to $7 million, and that's on the more conservative end, operating surplus, but our actual surplus, our actual what's in the bank is going to be significantly more, maybe $18 million in actual surplus if we're operating off of the 16.66 number, and, you know, potentially, you know, it'd still be 15 million or so if we're operating off of the 20%, if that was our goalpost. So again, just very healthy surplus, not just reserves, but surplus.
Seeing no further questions, would the clerk please take the roll?
I'm sorry, I do have a question.
Councilmember Burns.
I can jump in on here. Sorry about that. I think I read somewhere, I just want to double check that it says that the council has approved projects utilizing 2022 GO bonds in the amount of, and then it gives a $2 million roughly figure.
Yeah, these are the items, Councilmember Burns. If you see the, I don't know whether you can see those things, but we have 500,000 through CIP fund for waste transfer station, transfer to CIP fund for maintenance item. We used to bond that, so we have taken it out, 950,000. For fire truck purchase, 800,000, 105,000 for back park improvements, and $1 million, which just happened, I think, the last council in August, to the solid waste fund.
Okay, but by approved by council, does that mean that that, you know, when that item came to council, the recommendation was that we use 2022 GO bonds, or that we have already authorized it?
No.
I don't remember.
The funding source was that, okay, we use this out of the general fund excess surplus.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not following.
Councilmember Burns, it's Laura Biggs, city engineer. So there were a number of projects that have been approved so far this year that were funded with 2022 general obligation bonds. And the first meeting of the year, we typically, staff brings a resolution to city council that essentially allows the city council to spend GO bond money, and they're making a commitment that they will then pay that when we do issue the general obligation bonds. Due to the structure, our debt structure, and that we also try to refinance bonds when that comes available, we typically sell the GO bond in summer, usually in July or August. And that has not yet happened this year because staff has been pursuing other options in discussions with the Budget and Finance Committee. So basically speaking, then that would require at some point, the city council has indicated that they will pay those 2022 GO bond funded projects one way or another.
Okay. Yeah, I'll connect more offline. I just specifically remember, at least for myself, and I don't remember us authorizing any 2022 GO bonds yet. And specifically, at least for myself, making sure I did not support that. And so I need to, offline, I'll better understand what we've done. It was my understanding that we had only authorized, or that we were only using, 2021 GO bonds at this point, not 2022. But I will connect with you, Laura, offline and just try to better understand what we've approved. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And now, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries and the various updates are accepted and placed on file. This brings us to the consent agenda, which, as you all can see, is a real beast. I've already been asked to remove from the consent agenda the following items from the APW section: A9, A14, and A25 through 29. So that's A9, A14, A25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Are there other items folks would like to see removed from the consent agenda?
Item R1.
R1.
Potentially HC1. I would like, if this is the appropriate time, I guess I'll just pull it. HC1.
All right, HC1. Anything else? I know there's a lot to page through here, so I'll wait a moment. So we have A9, A14, A25, A26, 27, 28, 29, HC1, and R1. Is there anything else?
Just to clarify, so A14 is held and the rest are pulled?
Yeah, so I think A14 is held, A9, HC1, and R1 are being pulled for potential discussion before a vote, and A25 through 29 are being pulled to allow for a motion to suspend the rules and do intro and action all at once.
What is, I'm sorry, the agenda that we have is missing half of the pages, so I'm sorry, what is HC1?
Hold on, I've got a lot of paperwork in front of me here, my apologies.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So seeing no other requests, I would entertain a motion.
Oh.
Approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
Councilmember Nguyen approves approval of the consent agenda with the exception of items A9, A14, A25, A26, A27, A28, A29, HC1, and R1. Councilmember Nusma seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries, and the consent agenda with the aforementioned removals is now passed. This brings us to item A9. Councilmember Nusma, would you care to make a motion on item A9?
I will.
Mr. Mayor, I move item A9, approval of contract award to Street Plus for business district maintenance services.
Is there a second? Councilmember Nusma moves approval of item A9. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just clarify where we're at coming out of ANPW. Councilmember Burns had made a motion to go above and beyond the $508,000 that staff had requested. He made a motion to approve up to another $125,000 to be used at staff's discretion to include social services in this program. That motion received a 2-2 vote at ANPW, and it's my understanding that it therefore passes to council with a neutral recommendation. So meanwhile, we voted on the underlying motion to approve the $508,000, and I'm not sure parliamentary procedure-wise we were super clean, but that was the intent.
So let me tell you my understanding, and then I'll kick it over to our attorney to correct me. What I would say is the motion that I heard made on the floor here was an unamended A9, which is appropriate because an amendment was not approved in committee. Now that we're here discussing it, of course, Councilmember Burns or anyone else is free to make a motion to amend, and we could have a vote on that. But I don't think the item that did not receive a majority vote in committee is automatically on the floor here in the full council. Mr. Cummings?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And I would like to speak whenever I can. Thank you.
Are you done, Councilmember Newsome?
Since I sold the floor, I will just say I fully support the underlying motion voting on A9 to provide funding for a clean team provided by a vendor called Street Plus. I think it's something that eventually we might want to do these services. We might want to pull these in-house. But in order to address an immediate need downtown and in other business districts, the fastest way to get there is to go with a third party. So I'm fully supportive of the underlying motion. I'm also fully supportive of going above and beyond at some point in the future to expand the services to include trained social workers. And Councilmember Burns is going to suggest this. I think Councilmember Burns and I are in agreement with the direction we want to go. I would like to, rather than approving that tonight kind of in advance, take some time, do some homework, do some due diligence, and see what options we might have, and then sooner rather than later come back and vote on those options. That's my preference. Councilmember Burns may express a different way of getting to the same outcome, and we do agree on that outcome. But I'll reserve for now.
Councilmember Reed.
I'll reserve.
Councilmember Burns.
I called to the stand. Paul Zamazak. No, is Paul Zamazak around?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Paul Zamazak. How can I help you, Councilmember Burns?
Yeah, so to use Councilmember Newsome's his words, he said this is about addressing immediate need, moving forward with the clean team. And it is my strong opinion that another immediate need in light of what we've seen, post-COVID with increase in our homeless population, especially downtown, and the increase in need from our homeless population, that another need is to have to increase our effort and to add additional staff downtown that can interact with our homeless population and direct them to services. And this again should be dedicated staff and not people that have other coverage areas that they're attending to. And by other coverage areas, I mean coverage areas outside of the city of Evanston, but someone that is dedicated to our downtown area to address this, again, immediate and urgent need, as Councilmember Newsom described. And so what I'm trying to understand is that since that is also an immediate need, why was there a decision not to include this into the scope of work in the proposal that we have in front of us tonight?
Sure, thank you for the question. So I believe it was in the previous city council, so you probably do not recall this, but we brought forward a request to implement a clean team that would focus entirely on our downtown district and our business districts last May. And as part of that, we had recommended the inclusion of a caseworker or a team that would either be cross-trained or an individual or a small group of individuals would be used to really engage with that at-risk population. At the time, we were asked, staff was asked by two members of the city council to pause that request because at the time there was a plan to implement Trilogy, and I think Councilmember Ravel was part of that team. And I believe at that time we weren't sure what the scope of that service was going to be. And frankly, I don't know what the scope of that is today, to know that is Trilogy going to provide the same service that the Street Plus team said that they could provide. I don't know. So that's how I would answer that. That's why we did not include it in the scope, because we were asked not to at the time.
And I guess the question is, we've had Trilogy in place now, I don't know, who knows exactly how long we've had Trilogy in operation. Call it out if you know. If not, that's fine. But we've had them in for quite a while now. I guess just a quick question to you, Councilmember Newsome, before I continue. Do you think things have improved in such a way that would indicate that Trilogy provides us enough direct, our homeless population, enough direct support downtown in a way that would not require additional staff? Because that's not what I think a little bit ago you said we agree on the outcome that we need additional staff, but I just want to confirm that you're not, are you under the impression that Trilogy is providing enough support in this very kind of acute issue to where you're not sure if we even need to add additional staff?
We do need to do more. I think Trilogy has not been asked to provide the service that we're contemplating. We may very well want to ask them to weigh in and bid, so to speak. So they would be one option, to expand Trilogy's scope of work to offer these services. Another option might be to expand the contract with Street Plus. Another option might be to hire these people in-house, and there may be other options that we are not contemplating at the moment. But before we commit to any specific course of action, I think we need to take a minute, do some analysis, identify what the options are, define precisely what it is we're asking for, do some comparison shopping, and then make a decision at that time once we have that, once we've done the homework and once we have the information.
And so all that I agree with, but let's get a little bit more detail. So are you proposing that we do an RFP process for this position?
That's one way of doing it. I would defer to staff for for staff's recommendations.
Thank you. So I'm glad you said that. So Paul, what would be your recommendation? Do you recommend that we go back out for an RFP to fill this one dedicated position in our downtown area?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think I'm going to basically outline what I think are the universe of options, and I will share my preference. And my preference really is just a recommendation. It has no weight in any research that I have conducted on this matter. But we can hire somebody internally to do the job. We can ask one of our existing service providers to provide the service, which I don't know if anybody in town is doing that. Or we add the $75,000 the outreach coordinator that Mr. Hillard has suggested he could add to the contract. And he's prepared to bring that individual in or train them or however their program works nationally. That's how I view the universe of this. If I could decide tonight, I would recommend that we just try the $75,000 option for 1 year, see how it goes. And we know from feedback from the business community, and I think the executive director of downtown Evanston, Annie Coakley, had written a letter to the city council based on feedback she received from her board of directors that they would like to see somebody in place to do that. But I want to reinforce, I do not have an expertise in social services. I'm the economic development manager for the city. But my sense is if we could deploy that person with somebody who's experienced, who's doing this nationwide, and we try that for 1 year at $75,000, seems to be a relative bargain in that world of service. And if we during that year we can work together to build a stronger program or determine if we need to add more people to it or eliminate that person because we're duplicating services. That's what I would advise.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate that again, this is all about addressing an immediate need. We don't even know if we're going to continue to use the clean team that is being proposed today. So again, with that same logic, we have a pilot period where we can use something. And again, I use what our economic development manager said in our last meeting, something that's off the shelf, ready to go to address an immediate need. This is a service that they're providing in other jurisdictions that they are ready and equipped to provide here. And on that note, Steve Hillard, would you mind just explaining where that, the $75,000 or the I think it's called the social service outreach program? Thank you.
Steve Hillard, are you logged into the Zoom?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Welcome
yes,
back.
Thank you very much. My name is Steve Hillard. I'm the president and principal of Street Plus. And to answer the question, yes, we have a dedicated program nationwide where we have both licensed and unlicensed social service workers on our staff serving in conjunction with existing clean, safe, and friendly teams across the country. We provide these outreach workers in large cities such as Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Raleigh, North Carolina, New Haven, Connecticut, New York City, just to name a few. But the program has been extremely successful since we started about 8 years ago in downtown Chicago. And what we would be able to provide for you, should you elect to go this route, would be to hire a dedicated licensed social service worker to work with the existing clean team in engagement, referrals, case management, and working with the existing agencies in the area to ensure that those on the street that are vulnerable get to the appropriate services at the appropriate time.
Thank you. And the last thing I'll say is, and I'm about to hear from my colleagues about this, because I know I'm not the only one that has received the emails and phone calls, requesting or urging us, I should say, to add additional support for our homeless population downtown. And so again, I am not advising that we don't do our due diligence and look at all of our options. What I did was in APW was an amendment that if we, after doing that analysis or investigation of our options, we wouldn't, and if we determine the name of your company again, Steve Hillard, I'm sorry.
Yes, Street Plus.
If we determine that Street Plus is the best way for us to go, we can skip all the bureaucracy, right? Because this is an urgent need, right? An immediate urgent need. I have to continue to go back to that. We can skip that, and then we'll at least have authorized the city manager to increase this contract so that we can get the social service outreach staff, dedicated staff out downtown doing the work that they do best. And so, again, this was not a way to limit our investigations to only this company. It just allows us to, again, to bypass, in my opinion, unnecessary bureaucracy, unless we're going to go out for an RFP on this, which is a separate process that takes a long time. But if we're not going to do an RFP, which I don't think Paul recommended, then I think that gives us an option to still do all the reviews and then to make a decision. I was just finishing, Mayor. Well, you can have the floor. Thank you.
All right, your time is up. Next is Councilmember Ravel, followed by Kelly, followed by Reed.
One of the items that we were supposed to have on the agenda this evening, we moved to our meeting on the 27th because this was going to be so packed, and it was going to be an update from Trilogy about their mobile crisis response team program. That program, the workers on that program are trained mental health, behavioral health specialists, and they deal with people having mental health crises in particular, and with homeless people who are in a crisis mode. But I do think what we're talking about in terms of what's needed downtown is quite different. We're talking about the explosion of panhandlers, some of whom are homeless and many of whom are not. And I don't believe that Trilogy is equipped and I mean, they're busy enough doing the mental health, behavioral health crises. So I do think something else is needed. I guess I would support Director Zalmazak's idea of going ahead with the $75,000 program with Street Plus. But I think we'll definitely want to talk with Street Plus about making sure we incorporate the other nonprofit organizations in the community that work in particular with the homeless. But, you know, getting a handle on our panhandler situation is going to be a real challenge.
Councilmember, I couldn't tell if you made a motion to amend or if you just sort of expressed a view.
I was just talking. I'm happy to. So where are we with? So Councilmember Burns did not make a motion to amend.
He did not, and his time is also up.
Okay. Well, then I'll make.
I can still speak though, but 75,000.
No,
I'm fine with that. But I said 125 because it wasn't sure if we wanted to social work or licensed social worker. I think I'm saying that correctly, or some other role.
I would make a motion for the $75,000 that was provided to us from Street Plus as part of the program that they already have in operation that's ready to go, and they will know whether the person, what kind of license and credentials that person needs. So I move to amend.
And just to be clear,
I would recommend, Councilmember, that given that the current language specifies an amount, and that I think the intent that everyone, I believe, has expressed here is to give flexibility, not to force us in a particular direction, I might suggest not only adding $75,000 to that amount, but also changing the word from in the amount of to not to exceed. So you're kind of giving staff that flexibility, but not obligating them to do it.
Okay, that not to exceed 75,000.
Plus 508-200.57.
Right, yes, okay, that's my motion.
And do you mind putting it in writing?
No.
It's terrible. But if we hadn't vetted them for this.
And I will second that, but I do want to say something that's important.
Way to do it.
So we'll stand at ease for a moment while Councilmember Ravel reduces her motion to writing against her preferences. While that's going on, there's several people in line to speak, so we'll continue with the lineup, and we'll go back to you when the motion is ready. Councilmember Kelly, followed by Reed.
So, I concur with Councilmember Newsma, and I think that we should come back next time and have a better report and hear from Trilogy also. I mean, obviously, we are dealing with issues. Types of issues that Trilogy is addressing currently with our downtown, with our panhandling, and I think that we really do need to hear from Trilogy. I'm also meeting with the directors of the STAR program in Denver just to get a better understanding of how that very successful program has been working. So I really think this is acting a little bit too impetuously, and I think we really do need to do, these are human beings, this isn't sweeping the streets. So I'm going to ask that we please come back, that we consider it, and also even 75, it's sort of this random amount because that's what this firm wants. You know, personally, I think it should be considerably more money that we want to allocate for this, given the type of need of these, vulnerable individuals and the state of our downtown. So I think I would concur with Councilmember Newsma that we should wait, and I would like to have Trilogy also come and talk to us about the work they've done and where they see other areas that they see that we should be addressing. Thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
I support this as well. I supported it in committee where I thought it passed, but I guess it failed without us knowing. But I think this makes sense. This is an urgent issue. I agree with Councilmember Ravel's assessment of Trilogy's likely capacity. I think we can. This problem is much bigger than one position or $75,000. I think this will begin to make a dent in what we need to do. Even if it's a small dent, we'll be able to get some data, get some people on the ground, working with this population, prioritizing the needs of folks who are homeless and forced to beg on our streets. And I think this is a full commitment to creating a safe, clean downtown. Because if we're just going to say we're going to paper over what's going on downtown by cleaning up the trash here and there without actually dealing with the human beings, as Councilmember Kelly said, I don't think we're really getting to the root issue of the issue. And so I support the $75,000 amendment. I would support the $125,000 amendment. I think that we should still have folks come back to us in the near future and look into all supplemental programs. And so I'm going to be supporting this.
An amendment was sent by Council Member Ravel. I just forwarded it to everybody so everyone sees it in writing. It's seconded by Council Member Burns. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
Yes, do I get some new time, Mayor Biss, so I can say something quickly? That's important.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make clear that 75 125 is really the spirit is the same as what I'm proposing. The difference is, and this came up in APW, is the salary for a licensed social worker, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, and someone else is that difference between 75 and then I said 125 because Steve wasn't prepared to say exactly he didn't know what the licensed social worker was. So I just want to be clear that I'm happy with 75 or 125. I just want to get somebody out now so that we can get to work and then learn from it. Thank you.
Councilmember Newsma with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just kind of reiterate, I completely support having trained social workers on the street as soon as we can get them there. To treat the underlying human problem, as Councilmember Reed pointed out, that's critical. I would like to move there. I don't support doing that by increasing this contract because we have not vetted this supplier for that service. To approve that money without having a look at exactly what we want and looking at what other ways we might be able to achieve that goal is just not appropriate. This supplier happens to offer that service, and they may very well, in the end, be the right answer. But we have not done the homework to be able to answer that question. And I want to do this, and because it's so important, I want to do it right. I just don't want to take the first thing that's available and then realize in a month and a half, you know what, we should have done it this way, a different way. So I am fully supportive in concept of getting social workers on the street, but not based on a discussion at council at this point.
Mayor,
Councilmember Nguyen.
I call the question.
Councilmember Nguyen calls the question. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Councilmember Kelly seconds, so the motion is non-debatable. So would the clerk please call the roll on the motion to call the question?
In which question are we calling? The
I'm
amendment.
afraid we're calling the question on the amendment because that's the question on the floor.
Well, first we're voting on calling the question.
Well, right. There's a vote. The vote right now is to call the question. If that passes, then with no further debate, we'll be voting on the amendment.
Okay. Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I'd like to change my vote to a no. I just don't like calling the question.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 7 voting in favor and 1 voting against, the motion passes. The question is now, so the motion passes. So we move immediately to a vote on Councilmember Ravel's amendment to item A9, which you all again have in your email inboxes.
I have to keep track of it. Councilmember Nguyen? No. Councilmember Newsma?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
No.
Councilmember Kelly? No. Councilmember Harris?
No, I'm sorry.
No.
With 3 voting in favor and 5 voting against, the motion does not pass. Seeing no further discussion, we now move to the motion on the underlying item which has not been amended.
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes, and item A9, which again, after that was not amended, is declared passed. We now move to this suite of items A25 through A29, all of which are but potentially could have a suspension of the rules to allow for introduction and action both to occur tonight. Does anyone have any objection to us handling all of those simultaneously? Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, no objection. I was just going to move suspension of the rules.
Okay, go ahead.
I move suspension of the rules for item A25 through A29.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves suspension of the rules to allow items A25, 26, 27, 28, and 29 to receive both introduction and action this evening. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion?
Councilmember Harris.
What's that?
Councilmember Harris.
Oh, man. I messed that up on the first time.
It's okay.
I'm a monster. Councilmember Harris seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? That's an old light, right?
That's for when we get to the actual item.
We're not there yet.
Yep.
Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules?
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. And Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes and the rules are suspended. Now would someone care to make a motion on the underlying items?
I move approval of items A25 through A29.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves final approval of items A25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Councilmember Hadakaris seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, as my predecessor noted, tonight is a big night for the 8th Ward. There are a lot of exciting agenda items here. I do want to take a second. I see that the Peckish Pig crew has decided to stick around this long, so thank you. Palm House Peckish Pig crew, thank you for sticking around. But what I want to talk about is the Anne Rainey Senior Apartments, and I want to note one thing here is, I certainly support us passing this major adjustment to this particular plan development, but there have, as a result of this, been some discussions about amending our zoning rules overall to make something like what's coming before us not a major adjustment. And I don't think that's quite the direction we should go. I think we should look at it in the way that we're looking at it now, which is a case-by-case basis and making very clear why we are approving this and why in the future maybe we wouldn't approve another similar amendment. And again, as former Councilmember Rainey pointed out, these are, fairly minor facade changes. The community, I think, had some concerns when they got notices in the mail that said, hey, there's a major adjustment going on, and I got emails, and they're like, what the heck is this? But I think when you look into it, you see what it is, and it's not, in this instance, a major adjustment. But if we had a development that we approved in our downtown, and they promised us one facade and one design and one look, and they came back to us and said, hey, we're just not going to do that. We're going to build a building that looks completely different. They shouldn't, I hope, I'm saying this now, don't look back to this and think that you're going to be able to get away with this in the future. I think this is a particular instance. It's senior affordable housing. It's 100% affordable. That's correct. It's 100% affordable for seniors. This is the kind of development that we can allow this kind of major adjustment to happen on. But, some, luxury development downtown that's mostly charging market rate and maybe kicked into our affordable housing fund to not have to put actual affordable units on site. Those aren't the kind of developments that they shouldn't have the idea, and we shouldn't just blanket approve this kind of major adjustment for them. But in this case, I am fully in support of these amendments. I think that was not me. Okay, that's it.
Seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please take the roll on the motion, which again applies to 5 different items, each for introduction and action.
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hedakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. And Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes, and items 825 through 29 are all approved. And I want to echo Councilmember Reed. Thanks to everyone for their patience and sticking around for this later part of the agenda. And you're welcome to continue to stay. It's going to be great for the balance of the evening, I'm sure. Speaking of the balance of the evening, this brings us to item HC1. Councilmember Ravel, would you care to make a motion on this item?
Okay, just a minute while I find it. Oh, good, thank you. I move approval of Resolution 71-R-22, amending the 2021 Community Development Block Grant Program and authorizing the reallocation of unexpended funds and closing out the NSP2 grant by transferring unobligated program income to the CDBG program.
Second.
Councilmember Ravel moves passage of Resolution 71-R-22. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Councilmember Burns.
I don't know if Sarah is.
Sarah is here still.
Okay. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind just responding to Ms. Esther's request about a review period for her and others.
Sure. Sarah Flax, Housing and Grants Manager, Interim Community Development Director. I'm not really quite sure what Ms. Esther and others think needs to be confirmed. We met all the requirements of the NSP2 program, or HUD would not be allowing us to close it out. That's kind of how they work on these things. We acquired and rehabbed, we acquired 101 foreclosed units, which was one more than we had to, and either rehabbed them and put them back into productive use or otherwise mitigated their negative influences. We didn't actually, we had some vacant land. And we met our 25% set aside for the lowest income, the 50% and below, which was a requirement. There was at one point a question which actually Gail Schechter had raised. She emailed or she sent a letter to Wally Bobkowitz, Ray Willis, who was the HUD Community Planning and Development Director, and also the Assistant Executive Director at the Illinois Housing Development Authority at one point, saying that there had been allegations from some people that there had been not fair treatment of various people who were applying for housing. And they did a very large FOIA. They FOIA'd all of the, Clerk Mendoza actually found a bunch of these FOIA papers. It was a huge FOIA that was all of the pre-applications and the applications for all of the NSP housing, all the rental housing. And I actually have a 4-page letter after they went through the whole thing that was from Gail Schechter to all of those same people, and it closes my original assumption that the residents from the target neighborhoods well, that's not the part one. Yeah, well, wait, it can be placed at the top of the priority list. That was not part of the program structure, so she found that out. And then she said, we highly commend the city of Evanston as the northern suburb that has made the most extensive effort to accommodate the housing needs of its lowest income population, let alone those of moderate means. And as new development opportunities arise in targeted neighborhoods, and as the city develops its 5-year consolidated plan and reviews in West Evanston Master Plan, we all have the chance to collectively plan for the future. As always, we offer open communities as your fair housing resource. Please feel free to contact me. So basically, it's a 4-page letter, and it says all of the allegations that, for example, single female-headed households, especially headed by black women, were being discriminated, were not being given fair chance at housing. 17 out of 19 renters were black, of which nearly all, 15 of 17 or 88%, are female-headed households. And in the Live Evanston program, 81, that was in Emerson Square, 81%, 30 of 37 are black, all of which 24, 80% of the black households are headed by women. So the allegations that were the concern, I think, were completely found to be unfounded, and I can forward that letter to everybody if they would like it. I forwarded it to the city manager. So I don't really see any reason to hold up approval. I'll be happy to print out additional reports if Betty, Esther, and Gail Schechter and Bennett Johnson or anyone else would like to see that we met the goals of the grant. Thank you.
Councilmember Ravel.
Well, and I'd just like to add that the Housing and Community Development Committee did have a 30-day public comment period on this proposed amendment to this grand plan that we're now submitting.
Seeing no further discussion, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. And this brings us now to item R1. Councilmember Ravel, do you want to make a motion on this one?
Oh, your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I move approval of Resolution 58-R-22, amending the City Council rules. And this deals with, this allows residents to serve as the chair of a committee that reports directly to the council or to a standing committee of the council, if it comprises both residents and council members.
Second.
Councilmember Ravel moves passage of Resolution 58-R-22. Councilmember Reed seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
I just want to make a small amendment to this that I think will help save some staff time in the future while we are in the mode of amending council rules. Is Director Ogbo still here? Or did he take off for the evening? Usually sitting out in the anteroom, so I presume he's gone for the evening. But Director Ogbo and maybe Manager Stoneback can verify this. But Director Ogbo put forward an amendment to our rules that would eliminate the COVID-related regulations. And can you confirm that that's what was expressed?
Good evening, Dave Stone.
I can speak to that. He's of the view that it's appropriate to remove that restriction. Yeah. It would have been on tonight's agenda, but there was, I think, some miscommunication. It needs to either be a referral, because it is a policy change, or a special order of business. And it wasn't brought to my attention that he wanted it on this agenda until after the 5-day window closed. Otherwise, I would have been happy to make it a special order of business.
Okay. Well, but given that, and we have this opportunity to amend the rules here, the rules are open, so we can make an amendment. I've sent to Mayor Biss the amendment. It would just simply strike the COVID testing rules. The CDC updated their guidelines a while ago. Our health department is in support of this. we can save some staff time and effort, not having to force them to write a new memo or a resolution or anything, doing that. The language is there, and so we can just have them strike it as they're cleaning up this language here. So I move that we remove the COVID-related rules.
So Councilmember Reed has made a motion which has been sent in writing to me, but not the others yet. Mr. Cummings, I think, wanted to weigh in.
Just wanted to clarify first whether this is a motion to amend the resolution to include.
Correct.
Okay. And secondly, wanted to point out that the city council rules don't necessarily, they allow for temporary repeal or temporary suspension of the rules, but not necessarily amendment of them on the fly without going through the rules committee. City council rules require that the rules are amended by the rules committee. This particular amendment that's before the body has gone through the rules committee, is my understanding. And so to then include a new rule would be a sort of a violation of the city council rules unless they are temporarily suspended.
Can you point to the rule, that point of information? What is
number 3?
What is number 3?
It deals with the amendment, repeal, or suspension of rules.
And okay, I'm pulling up Rule 3.
And also Rule 9.3 deals with the jurisdiction of the rules committee.
So that doesn't say amendment. It just says any rule may be temporarily suspended. So that's Rule 3. And so you're saying Rule 9 what?
9.3 deals with the jurisdiction of the rules committee.
Yeah,
and
that deals with
revision of the rules, city council rules, is in the jurisdiction of the rules committee.
Yeah, but we could make an amendment to this here. I don't see a rule that specifically says we couldn't.
There's no rule that says you can.
Well, but you're
the rules specifically put the revision of the city council rules in the jurisdiction of the rules committee unless you suspend the rules. So if you want to amend the city council rules on the fly, you need to suspend the rules to do so. Otherwise, it needs to go through the rules committee.
So you're saying that any time that we've had a motion, we've had an amendment to the rules that was amended at all here at the council, that was a violation of the rules?
Anytime that there is an attempt to amend permanently the city council rules here without going through the rules committee, yes, it would be a violation of the city council rules. It would need to go through the rules committee first and then adopted by this body.
Okay, this is a dumb thing for us to argue about. Councilmember Reed, do you want to move to suspend the rules to allow this?
Suspension of the rules requires a unanimous vote. I don't know.
I think for this it would be 2/3, wouldn't it?
Oh,
I think it's
okay.
only
I guess,
for-
yeah. So it'd be 2/3. Again, I just want to reiterate, this would save Director Ogbo maybe 30 minutes of his day not having to write a new memo. It would save the law department a bit of time, not 30 minutes, not having to write a new resolution. It's just striking language that Director Ogbo, the CDC, and healthcare professionals recommend.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
if this like runs into a procedural snag in the next 30 seconds, it'll be on the agenda in 2 weeks.
Sure.
Personally, I'm supportive of what you're trying to do here. I just think you should.
Yeah, I just want to, for my colleagues who are a bit skeptical of it, let's just save, let's not waste staff time having to write up memos about things that they've demonstrated we should do. So I will move to suspend the rules and hope that everybody will support not putting extra work on staff unnecessarily.
So Councilmember Reed moves to suspend Rule 9.3 to allow us to amend item R1 here at the council without doing so at the Rules Committee. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Councilmember Hadakati seconds. Discussion on this motion. We begin with Councilmember Nguyen.
I pass. I just would like to go home the same day that I came.
Councilmember Nusma.
I'm probably fully supportive of it, but if you have you emailed that.
I have not done so. And I do want to be clear that what I have from Councilmember Reed is exactly what Director Ogbo wanted on the agenda, and I turned him down for procedural reasons. That's all that's going on here, I promise. But I'm sending it to everyone right now so you see it. Seeing no further discussion, could the clerk please take the roll? And this is again on the rule suspension motion. So we're going to then, if this passes, there's two more things to do afterwards. But first, on the rule suspension motion.
Okay. Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, even by the unanimous threshold that we didn't have to clear, the motion passes. The rules are suspended. Councilmember Reed, would you like to make your motion now?
Yep, I move what the mayor has sent to everyone.
Is there a second? Councilmember Reed moves to strike the two rules referenced in the email, Rule 5.4.1 and Rule 10.7. Councilmember Ravel seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll? This is on an amendment to R1. When that's done, if it passes, R1 will be amended, and then we would vote on R1 as amended.
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes. Resolution 58-R-22 is now amended. And seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please take the roll on R1 as it has now been amended?
Councilmember Nguyen? Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Aye. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes, and the now amended 58-R-22 is declared passed.
Just point of information, apologies. I just do want us to get this, whatever rule or whatever just happened here, I want us to get that cleared up for the future, because that would mean that any committee that's...
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for us to discuss.
Yeah.
I have some similar questions that I'll take offline. That brings us to call of the wards. Councilmember Nguyen.
No report.
Councilmember Newsma.
Next Fourth Ward meeting will be Tuesday, October 4th, and Fourth Ward office hours will be Saturday, October 8th. And again, I'd like to welcome our new colleague, Chrissy Harris, to the dais. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
At the recommendation of a longtime Fifth Ward resident, I looked into and was able to secure the Secretary of State's mobile drivers services team for a mobile DMV event on Saturday, October 1st, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Fleetwood Jourdain Center. The services provided will be driver's license cards, renewal and corrections, state ID cards, new, renewal, and corrections, free state IDs for seniors age 65 plus, license plate renewal stickers, and voter registration with renewal, driver's license ID, etc. And seniors age 75 plus must visit an established Secretary of State Driver Services facility to renew a driver's license, and no real IDs can be obtained at the event. And payments for services must be made by check, credit card, debit card, or money order. No cash will be accepted. Again, this is the Secretary of State's mobile drivers to service team is coming to Fleetwood Jourdain October 1st between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Thank you.
Councilmember Ravel.
I too would like to welcome our new council member, Chrissy Harris. I look forward to working with you, and you're a great addition, so thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
Yes, I've welcomed Ms. Harris already, our new colleague. I didn't speak to everyone, but I spoke to a good number of my colleagues, a necessary majority. to discuss, a while back, I made a referral to create a refugee resettlement fund, and that was in the wake of our sister city and their country, with Kiev and Ukraine being invaded. Now we have a new crisis that is amassing now, literally on our Evanston border in some cases with Chicago, and the governor of Texas and other states sending migrants by the quite literally by the busload to Chicago and to surrounding suburbs. And so I think it makes sense for Evanston to be prepared for this and to set aside, which was referred to Finance and Budget, although those who sit on the Finance and Budget know that we're not really discussing individual policy proposals. We're really looking at big picture items. So my my motion is to create a special order of business for either our next council meeting or the first meeting in October to set aside $50,000 for refugee resettlement and have staff come up with, ways that we would use those funds to support folks. I know that I spoke with Manager Stowe on Friday, and I believe Evanston has been asked by the state to take on some of the refugees and migrants who are arriving in Chicago. And of course, there's some state funding up front, but we don't know when that's going to dry up and how far that's going to go. So I would at least like us to set aside that $50,000, have some idea of what that can get us, and be able to assess from there. And so I move that we place that request on the council agenda as a special order of business. And I'll leave it to our manager to decide whether it's our next meeting or the first meeting in October.
Councilmember Reed moves to create a special order of business on one of the next two regular council meetings.
Correct, yes. Thank you.
To create a $50,000 refugee resettlement fund, I believe?
Yeah.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Councilmember Hedekade seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hedekade.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly. Aye. Councilmember Harris.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes, and the special order of business will be on one of the next two regular city council meeting agendas. Councilmember Hedekade.
Next Wednesday, on the 21st, I'll be having a Ninth Ward meeting at 7 o'clock, and will be virtual.
Councilmember Kelly.
Virtual First Ward meeting this Thursday at 7 p.m. A notice will go out, an email will go out tomorrow, and also this Wednesday there is a Land Use Commission hearing for the First Ward proposed development along Chicago Avenue. And then next week we'll have informal First Ward conversations, and that place and time is to be announced. Thank you.
And Councilmember Harris.
Just a quick thank you to everyone for your vote of confidence, and I will be setting up ward meetings and departmental meetings. Thank you.
And with that, Councilmember Newsma is recognized to make a motion.
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel, purchase or use of real property, and litigation. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act as set forth in 5 ILCS 120/2A, sections C1, C5, and C11.
Councilmember Newsma moves that the City Council resolve itself into an executive session to discuss the aforementioned items. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Hedekade.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Harris.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries, and the City Council resolves itself into executive session to begin immediately in the Council Member Library.